Have you ever felt like you were running a race with no finish line? You wake up, the alarm clock, a shrill cry demanding you begin. Your mind, already buzzing with 1,000 thoughts, the to-do list, the emails, the expectations of the world, of your family, of yourself. You push through the day, fueled by coffee and a relentless sense of urgency. You navigate traffic, deadlines, and difficult conversations. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when you want to disappear. Then, at the end of the day, you collapse. But the race isn't over. Your mind keeps running, replaying conversations, worrying about tomorrow, the weight of it all pressing down on your chest, a silent, heavy blanket. You scroll through your phone, a desperate search for a distraction, for a moment of peace, but find only more noise, more comparison, more feeling of being left behind. You lie in the dark, and the silence is not peaceful. It is loud. It is filled with the echoes of your own anxieties. There is a story about a man who was chased by 2 ferocious tigers. He ran as fast as he could, but the tigers were gaining on him. He came to the edge of a cliff. With no other choice, he grabbed onto a vine hanging over the edge and began to climb down. As he hung there, suspended between the chasing tigers above and the jagged rocks below, he looked down and saw a 3rd tiger waiting for him at the bottom. The vine was his only hope. But then he noticed 2 mice, one white and one black, gnawing at the vine. He knew that soon the vine would break. In that moment of absolute peril, hanging between the past he couldn't escape and a future he couldn't face, what did he do? He noticed a single, wild strawberry growing from the cliff face. He reached out, plucked it, and put it in his mouth. He savored it. It was, he thought, the most delicious strawberry he had ever tasted. We are that person. The tigers behind us are the regrets and sorrows of our past. The tiger below is the uncertainty and fear of the future. The vine is our life, and the black and white mice are day and night, time itself, steadily eating away at our existence. And the strawberry? The strawberry is this very moment, this present, precious, fleeting moment. This is the heart of Zen. It is not about escaping the world or ignoring its dangers. It is about finding the strawberry. It is about learning to be fully present, to find peace not by changing our circumstances, but by changing our relationship to them. For the next 3 hours, we will embark on a journey not to a distant land, but into the vast, silent landscape of your own mind. We will explore the timeless wisdom of Zen, not as a religion or a dogma, but as a practical path to quiet the noise, to calm the storm, to find the deep, inner silence that is already within you, waiting to be discovered. There is nothing you need to believe. There is only an invitation to stop running, to let go of the vine, just for a moment, and to taste the strawberry. 1. The empty cup. There is a story, perhaps one of the most famous in Zen, about a scholar who came to visit a master. He was a man of great learning, his mind filled with theories, scriptures, and complex philosophies about the nature of reality. He came to the master not to learn, but to show off his own knowledge, to debate, to prove his intellectual superiority. He spoke for hours, his words a torrent, a relentless flood of ideas, leaving no space for silence, no room for a different perspective. The Zen master listened patiently, his face a mask of serene neutrality. While the scholar talked, the master began to prepare tea. He placed a beautiful, simple ceramic cup before the scholar and began to pour. He poured and poured. The tea filled the cup, reached the brim, and then began to overflow. spilling onto the saucer, and then onto the table, a warm, amber stream. The scholar, startled out of his monologue, cried out, "Stop! What are you doing? The cup is full. No more will go in." The master stopped pouring, looked the scholar in the eye, and said softly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story, simple as it is, strikes at the very heart of our modern struggle. Our minds are like that overflowing cup. From the moment we wake, we are inundated. Information from our phones, demands from our jobs, the opinions of others, the constant chatter of our own inner critic. We are full of worries about the future, replaying hurts from the past, full of ideas about who we are supposed to be, what we are supposed to achieve. We are so full, there is no space for peace. There is no space for genuine connection. There is no space for the present moment. We come to practices like meditation or mindfulness seeking solace, but we bring our full cup with us. We want to add peace on top of our anxiety. We want to layer stillness over our racing thoughts. But it doesn't work that way. You cannot pour fresh, clean water into a cup already filled with stale coffee. The result is just a diluted mess. The first step, the most crucial, and often the most difficult, is to empty the cup. But what does this mean in a practical sense? How do we empty a mind that seems to have a will of its own? It is not about forcing thoughts out. You cannot fight your mind and win. Trying to suppress a thought is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The moment you relax your grip, it bursts to the surface with even greater force. The emptying of Zen is a gentler process. It is a process of letting go. It begins with observation, simply noticing the contents of your cup without judgment. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. The thoughts, feelings, and sensations that arise in your mind are like leaves, twigs, and other debris floating by on the current. Your task is not to jump into the river and grab them. It is not to try and stop the river from flowing. It is simply to watch them float by. A thought arises, "I have so much to do tomorrow." Instead of latching onto it, creating lists, and feeling the anxiety build, you simply label it. A thought about the future, and you let it go. You watch it float down the river and disappear. Another feeling arises, a pang of regret about something you said yesterday. Instead of replaying the conversation, spiraling into self-criticism, you acknowledge it. A feeling of regret, and you let it float by. This is not easy. At first, you will get swept away by the river 100 times a day. You will find yourself halfway downstream, entangled in a story, before you even realize you've left the bank. This is normal. This is of the practice. The moment you realize you have been swept away, you have already returned to the shore. There is no need for frustration. You simply, gently, guide your attention back to the act of observing, back to the breath, back to the sensations in your body, back to the here and now. Emptying the cup is also about questioning our own certainties. The scholar was certain of his knowledge. We are certain of so many things. We are certain of our political views, our opinions about others, our beliefs about our own limitations. I'm not a creative person. I'll never be able to do that. This is just who I am. These certainties are the hardened dregs at the bottom of the cup. They prevent anything new from entering. Zen asks us to hold these beliefs a little more loosely, to approach life with what is called beginner's mind. A beginner's mind is open, eager, and free of preconceptions. To a beginner, the possibilities are endless. To an expert, they are few. When you approach a difficult conversation with a beginner's mind, you are not burdened by past arguments. You are open to truly hearing what the other person is saying for the first time. When you approach a task you think you are bad at with a beginner's mind, you give yourself the freedom to fail, to learn, to be surprised by your own capabilities. This emptying is a continuous process. It is a daily practice. It is the conscious decision, moment by moment, to let go of what is overflowing and make space. To make space for the quiet voice of intuition beneath the roar of opinion. To make space for the simple beauty of the world that is obscured by our mental clutter. To make space for peace, not as an additive, but as the natural state of a mind that is clear, open, and receptive. The master did not tell the scholar to break the cup. The cup, our mind, is a wonderful and necessary vessel. He simply asked him to empty it. So, right now, in this moment, can you feel the fullness of your own cup? Can you feel the pressure of the thoughts, the weight of the worries? Do not fight them. Do not judge them. Simply acknowledge them. And then, with your next breath, imagine you are gently tipping the cup, allowing some of its contents to spill out. With each exhale, let a little more go. Let go of the argument you had this morning. Let go of the deadline looming next week. Let go of the idea of who you think you should be. Empty your cup so that something new, something quiet, something true can finally have the space to enter. 2. The sound of one hand clapping. Two hands clap, and there is a sound. What is the sound of one hand? This is perhaps the most famous Zen koan of all. A koan is not a riddle to be solved. It is not a puzzle with a clever answer that can be looked up in a book or reasoned out with logic. A koan is a surgical tool for the mind. It is a question designed specifically to break the machine of our ordinary, rational thinking. Our minds are conditioned from birth to operate on a simple principle: cause and effect. A plus B equals C. We strike a match and fire appears. We clap two hands together and a sound is produced. This is the predictable, reliable world our intellect is built upon. It is a world of pairs, of opposites, of action and reaction. The master's question, what is the sound of one hand, deliberately short-circuits this entire process. It presents a paradox that the logical mind cannot compute. The intellect, being a relentless problem-solving machine, immediately goes to work. Its first, most obvious answer is, there is no sound. The sound of one hand is silence. This seems logical, but it is a conceptual answer, a thought about silence, not the experience of it. It is a lazy answer, born from the intellect's desire to quickly resolve the tension and move on. A true master would see this as a refusal to engage with the question, and might respond with a sharp word or even a strike from his staff, not out of cruelty, but to wake the student from his intellectual slumber. Frustrated, the mind might then try to be clever. It might search for a more sophisticated, scientific answer. It is the whisper of air moving as the hand slices through it. Or, it is the sound of the blood coursing through the veins in the hand. But these too are products of the analytical mind. They are observations about the physical world, external phenomena. They are still answers that come from out there, from the world of objects and descriptions. They do not touch the heart of the koan. The koan is not an inquiry into physics or acoustics. It is an arrow pointing inward. The purpose of the koan is to exhaust the intellect, to push the thinking mind against a wall so impenetrable that it finally, out of sheer exhaustion, gives up. The koan is designed to lead the student and to lead us to a profound and deeply uncomfortable state, the state of I don't know. In our culture, I don't know is treated as a sign of failure, of ignorance. We are expected to have answers, to hold opinions, to project an aura of certainty. We build our very identities our sense of self, around the fortress of what we know. Zen proposes something radical, that true wisdom, true creativity, and true peace can only begin when we are willing to let go of knowing. When we can comfortably rest in the fertile emptiness of don't know, the mind finally becomes quiet. It stops its frantic, habitual search for answers in the usual filing cabinets of memory and logic. And in this quiet, in this stillness, something else has a chance to emerge. Think about the overwhelming problems in your own life. A serious conflict in a relationship, a crisis at work, a frightening health diagnosis. What is our first, most deeply ingrained instinct? It is to think our way out of the problem. We analyze, we strategize, we worry. We turn the problem over and over and over in our minds, like a sharp stone in our hand, until our psyche is raw and bleeding. We create endless scenarios. We play out imaginary conversations. We desperately try to control every variable to force a desired outcome. This is the two-hand approach. It is the violent clapping of our desires against the hard surface of reality. It is the clash of what I want versus what is. And this internal clapping creates a tremendous amount of noise, friction, stress, and suffering. The koan of the single hand is an invitation to a different way of being. It is an invitation to the one-hand approach. It asks us to withdraw the second hand, to stop the frantic clapping, to cease fighting the problem, to let go of the desperate, anxious need for our intellect to produce a solution right now. It asks us to simply sit with the problem, to hold it in our awareness, without the compulsive need to fix it. What does this look like in a practical sense? Imagine you are faced with a monumental decision. You have made the pro-con lists. You have sought advice. You have analyzed it from every angle. And still, you are paralyzed by indecision. Your mind has become a noisy, chaotic battlefield of conflicting thoughts and fears. The one-hand approach is to consciously stop, to sit down in a quiet place, to close your eyes, and to simply hold the question, the indecision itself, in your awareness. You don't try to think about it anymore. You just feel it. You feel the raw sensation of being stuck. You feel the tension it creates in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your stomach. You watch the anxious thoughts as they arise, and you let them pass by like clouds in the sky. Without grabbing onto them, you are no longer listening for the clamor of your own thoughts. You are listening for something else entirely. You are listening for the sound of one hand. This sound, of course, is not a sound at all. It is a metaphor for a different kind of knowing, an intuitive understanding that arises not from the noisy, frantic process of thinking, but from a place of deep, profound stillness. It is the quiet whisper of insight that bubbles up from the depths when the surface of the water is calm. It is the sudden feeling of clarity, the effortless sense of rightness that settles over you when the internal war has finally ceased. This path requires a great deal of trust. It requires trusting that an answer does not have to be brutally forced from the mind. It requires trusting that there is a wisdom within you that is far deeper and more intelligent than your conscious intellect. Our society teaches us to trust only what we can prove, measure, and articulate. To trust the sound of one hand is to trust the unseen, the unspoken, the intuitive. The young monk in the monastery might wrestle with this koan for months, even years. He would approach his master with his intellectual answers. The sound is the wind in the pines. The master would shake his head. He might present a philosophical argument about non-duality. The master would send him away. The master is relentlessly pushing the student beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond the entire apparatus of the thinking mind. He is forcing him to find a way to express a reality that cannot be captured in language. The breakthrough, the satori, or moment of awakening, often comes in a moment of utter surrender, when the monk has exhausted every possible intellectual path, when his mind is completely empty, defeated, and silent. He might be walking in the garden and hear a bird sing, and in that moment of pure, unmediated hearing, he understands. Or he might simply, in his next audience with the master, without a single thought in his head, raise one hand in silence. In that simple, profound gesture, he is not presenting an intellectual answer. He is presenting the living reality of the koan itself. He is presenting the pure, unadorned presence of this moment. He is the sound of one hand. And in that silent communion, master and student understand each other perfectly. The frantic clapping has stopped. There is only the vast, peaceful silence of being. So, when you feel overwhelmed by a problem, when your mind is clapping furiously, making you deaf with its own noise, remember the koan. Ask yourself gently, what is the sound of one hand? This question is a sacred key. It is an invitation to stop, to withdraw the violent, striving energy of your intellect, to create a small sacred space of quiet, not knowing, and in that space, to listen, not with your ears, but with your entire being. Listen for the subtle, silent guidance that can only be heard when the clapping finally stops. The answer you seek may not come as a word or an idea. It may come as a profound sense of peace, a quiet, inner clarity, a simple, effortless knowing of the very next step to take. That is the sound of one hand, and it is a sound that has the power to heal the deepest anxieties of your soul. 3. Is that so? In the quiet theater of our minds, we are the star actor, the director, and the audience, all at once. The play is our life, and its most dramatic scenes are often those of perceived injustice. Think of the last time you felt wronged, a word of gossip that reached your ears, twisting your intentions into something ugly, a false accusation whispered in a meeting, or sent in a cold, formal email. The sting of being misunderstood by someone you love. In those moments, a storm erupts within us. The heart beats like a war drum. A hot flush of adrenaline and indignation rises from the chest to the face. The mind, our loyal but frantic servant, begins to spin uncontrollably. It obsessively replays the event, gathering evidence, crafting defenses, imagining devastating counterarguments. We are captured, completely consumed by the narrative of our own victimhood. Our peace is not just disturbed, it is annihilated. Our entire inner world becomes a battlefield. And the irony is, the person who wronged us may have long since moved on, while we remain trapped in the prison of our own reaction, drinking the poison of our resentment day after day. We believe, in these moments, that our anger is justified, that our defense is necessary. We feel that to protect our honor, our reputation, our very sense of self, we must fight back. But what if this entire premise is flawed? What if true strength, true invincibility, lies not in building better defenses, but in having nothing to defend? There is a story from the life of the Zen master Hakuin that shines a light on this profound and liberating possibility. Hakuin was a man who lived at the peak of human reverence. In his small village, he was more than just a monk. He was a living treasure, regarded as a pillar of purity and profound wisdom. The villagers would seek his counsel on matters spiritual and mundane, His presence was a source of calm and stability for the entire community. He lived a simple, austere life, his days marked by meditation, teaching, and quiet service. His reputation was a flawless diamond, polished by years of impeccable conduct. Then, one day, that diamond was dragged through the mud. A beautiful teenage daughter of a local merchant was discovered to be pregnant. Her parents, a respectable family, were beside themselves with fury and shame. They demanded to know the name of the father. The girl, terrified, and perhaps wanting to protect her actual lover, or perhaps out of some other inexplicable impulse, finally uttered a name that was beyond belief. She named the pure, the revered, the celibate master, Hakuin. The news spread through the village like a forest fire. The shock quickly curdled into outrage. The family, followed by a mob of villagers whose admiration had turned to righteous fury, stormed to the temple. They were a tempest of raw emotion. They screamed at him, their faces contorted with hate. They called him a lecher, a hypocrite hiding behind holy robes, a charlatan who had betrayed their trust. They spat on the ground before him. The air was thick with their hatred, a palpable force that would have crushed a lesser man. They were destroying everything he had built over a lifetime: his name, his honor, his place in the community. Throughout this entire onslaught, Hakuin remained perfectly still. He did not flinch. He did not argue. He did not protest his innocence. He simply stood there, a rock of stillness in the middle of their raging river of anger. As their tirade reached its crescendo, and they stood panting, waiting for his defense or his denial, he looked at them with clear, calm eyes and said only 2 words: "Is that so?" His response was so unexpected, so contrary to the drama, that it left them momentarily speechless. Soon after, the baby, a healthy boy, was born. The family, still convinced of Hakuin's guilt, brought the infant to the temple. With contempt, they thrust the child into his arms. "This is your responsibility now," they sneered. "You are the father. You will care for him." In one cruel act, they stripped him of his reputation and burdened him with the consequences of a scandal he had no in. And Hakuin's life changed completely. He accepted the child without a word of protest. He cared for the infant with a tenderness and love that was breathtaking in its purity. This was not a passive resignation. It was an active embrace of reality as it presented itself. He, the great master, would rise in the dead of night to comfort the crying baby. He, who was used to receiving offerings, now had to go begging. He would walk through the village, enduring the scornful glares and hateful whispers of the very same people who once bowed to him. He would hold out his bowl, not for himself, but to ask for milk and scraps of cloth for the child. Every closed door, every contemptuous look was a new blow to his former status. Yet, he never complained. He never sought to explain or defend himself. He simply did what was needed, with a heart full of compassion for the tiny, innocent life in his care. A year passed in this way. The weight of the lie became too heavy for the young mother's conscience to bear. Finally, overcome with guilt, she broke down and confessed the truth to her parents. The real father was a young man who worked at the local fish market. The family was horrified, not at their daughter, but at the terrible injustice they had inflicted upon a holy man. Drowned in shame and remorse, they rushed to Hakuin's temple, the girl trailing behind them. They fell to the ground, prostrating themselves, their tears soaking the dusty floor. They stammered out their confession, their apologies, their pleas for forgiveness. "We were wrong, Master. We were so wrong. Please, forgive us. Please, give us our child back." Hakuin listened to their entire tearful story with the same calm, patient attention with which he had listened to their accusations a year before. He looked at the remorseful family, then at the child he had come to love. Then, as he gently handed the baby back into the arms of its mother, he said, just as calmly, just as peacefully as before, "Is that so?" This story is a masterclass in emotional and spiritual freedom. Hakuin's response, "Is that so?" is not one of apathy or weakness. It is the signature of a mind that has achieved ultimate liberation. It is a powerful tool, a spiritual technology of the highest order. It works by creating a space. In our normal, reactive lives, there is no space. A stimulus happens, the insult, the accusation, and our response is immediate, a knee-jerk, conditioned reflex. The event and our reaction are fused together. We are puppets, and the world's events pull our strings. The phrase, "Is that so?" is the sound of the strings being cut. It inserts a sacred pause between the stimulus and the response. When the villagers accused him, his response was not an admission of guilt. It was a profound act of non-resistance. He was saying, "I see that this is your reality. I see the story that is alive and burning in your minds right now. I acknowledge your perception. Is that so?" He acknowledged their world without having to enter it. He saw their storm without becoming the storm. His peace was not dependent on their opinion of him, so their anger had no place to land. It was like trying to set fire to water. Even more profoundly, his response was the same when they came to vindicate him. When they praised him, when they begged for forgiveness, when they sought to restore his reputation as a good man, he again said, "Is that so?" This shows that he was just as unattached to the label of saint as he was to the label of sinner. He knew that good reputation and bad reputation are two sides of the same coin. They are both external, fleeting, and have nothing to do with one's true nature. His inner peace was not derived from their praise, any more than it was disturbed by their blame. He was free from the entire game of approval and disapproval. Think about the labels you hold dear in your own life. I am a competent professional. I am a loving nurse. I am an intelligent person. I am a good person. These are the cornerstones of our ego. We spend so much of our life's energy curating and defending these identities. When an event happens that threatens one of these labels, we panic. We feel as if we are under existential attack because we have confused our true self with this fragile, constructed identity. The practice of "Is that so?" can be applied directly to this internal process. When that voice of the inner critic arises, the one that says, "You are a failure, you messed that up completely," instead of immediately believing it or fighting it, you can create a space. You can gently, internally ask, "Is that so?" Is it an absolute, unchanging, 100% truth that I am a failure? Or is this a story, an interpretation, a thought arising out of fear? This simple question can loosen the thought's tyrannical grip. It exposes the thought, not as a solid truth, but as a fleeting mental event. When dealing with others, this practice is a form of deep compassion. When a friend or nurse is angry and says, "You don't care about me," our instinct is to defend. "Of course I care. How can you say that?" This just creates more conflict. But to pause and think, from their perspective, in this moment, they are experiencing a reality in which they feel, "I don't care. Is that so?" Wow. Allows you to respond with curiosity and empathy rather than defensiveness. You can then say, "It hurts me to hear that. What happened that made you feel that way?" You are no longer fighting about whose reality is correct. You are exploring their feeling from a place of shared humanity. Hakuin's peace was not a magical shield. It was the result of a mind that had been trained to see reality clearly. He knew that he was not his reputation. He was not the story the villagers were telling about him. He was the silent, aware presence that was witnessing it all. He was the sky, and their opinions were just clouds passing through. By practicing the sacred pause, by asking, "Is that so?" we begin to untangle our own identity from the ever-changing stories of the world. We stop being the victim of our circumstances and start becoming the calm, unshakable witness. The profound peace that Hakuin embodied is not a distant, mythical state reserved for ancient masters. It is a seed of potential within each of us, waiting to be watered, one mindful breath and one simple, world-changing question at a time. 4. The empty boat. We navigate the river of life in a vessel of our own making. It is the vessel of our self, our personality, our story. And as we journey, we are bound to encounter other boats. More often than we'd like, these encounters are not gentle passings in the day, but jarring, unexpected collisions that send a shockwave through our entire being. The jolt is visceral. A car swerving into your lane, forcing you to slam on the brakes. A colleague's passive-aggressive comment in an email that feels like a deliberate jab. A loved one's sharp, careless words during a moment of tension. In that instant of impact, our immediate, primal instinct is to look for the pilot of the other boat. Our mind, a masterful prosecutor, instantly begins to build a case. We assign motive. We infer intent. They did that on purpose. They have no respect. They are trying to undermine me. We see a face, a will, a conscious agent of our suffering steering that other vessel directly towards us. And with that perception, our own world shrinks. Anger, a hot and intoxicating poison, floods our system. We shout, we curse, we honk the horn, we draft a scathing reply in our heads. We lie awake at night, replaying the collision, polishing our grievances, solidifying the story of our righteousness and their villainy. Our peace is held hostage, entirely dependent on the perceived actions and intentions of every other pilot on the river. But what if our perception is fundamentally flawed? What if our search for someone to blame is the very source of our suffering? There is a timeless parable from the Taoist sage, Chuang Tzu, a story so deeply resonant with the spirit of Zen that it has been cherished for centuries as a key to unlocking profound freedom. Imagine, he says, a man crossing a wide, misty river in his small skiff. The world is quiet, wrapped in the grey silence of the morning. Suddenly, out of the shifting fog, another boat appears, moving erratically on a direct collision course with his own. The man's peace is shattered. He cups his hands to his mouth and yells, "Hey, watch out! Steer clear! Are you blind?" His voice cuts through the stillness, sharp with irritation. But the boat continues its unwavering approach. He yells again, his voice now laced with real anger, "Turn aside, you fool." Still, there is no response, no change in course. Finally, with a loud, splintering thud, the boat strikes his. The man is thrown off balance, his cargo rattled. He is boiling with rage, ready to unleash a torrent of curses upon the incompetent oaf who has so carelessly disrupted his journey. He turns, his face a mask of fury, to confront the pilot, and he sees that the other boat is empty. There is no one there, no one to blame, no one to absorb his rage. The boat had simply broken free of its moorings upstream and was now drifting helplessly with the silent, indifferent currents of the river. In that instant of recognition, a profound shift occurs within the man. His entire reality reconfigures. The towering edifice of his anger, built on the foundation of blame, crumbles into nothing. How can you be angry at an empty boat? The fury, with no target to cling to, simply dissolves into the mist. The event is the same. His boat is still damaged, but his experience of the event is transformed from one of personal injury to one of impersonal circumstance. It simply is. Chuang Tzu's lesson is this: if a man is crossing a river and an empty boat collides with his own skiff, even though he be a bad-tempered man, he will not become very angry. But if he sees a man in the boat, he will shout at him and will end by cursing. And all because there is somebody in the boat. Yet if the boat were empty, he would not be shouting and not be angry. This parable is a direct invitation to look at our entire lives through a new lens. The world is filled with boats that collide with ours. But Zen asks us to look closer. What if every boat that bumps into you is, in a very real sense, empty? What if the person who hurt you is not a malicious pilot aiming for you, but is themselves a vessel being pushed about by powerful, invisible currents? The currents of their own history, their own unhealed wounds, their own deep-seated fears, their own profound ignorance. The driver who cut you off so aggressively? Perhaps his boat is not piloted by arrogance, but is being swept along by the desperate current of grief. Having just left a loved one's bedside at the hospital, his boat is empty of any intention towards you. His entire world has narrowed to the single point of his own pain. The co-worker who took credit for your idea? Perhaps her boat is not piloted by malice, but is being tossed in the terrifying waves of insecurity. A deep-seated fear of being seen as worthless that has haunted her since childhood. Her action wasn't about hurting you. It was a desperate, clumsy attempt to keep her own boat from sinking. The Ner whose words felt like a knife. Perhaps their boat is not piloted by a lack of love for you, but is caught in a whirlpool of stress from pressures you know nothing about. A silent fear of the future that is making them flail. To see the world this way is not about making excuses for harmful behavior. It is not about becoming a passive doormat. You still have the right to steer your own boat, to mend the damage, to set clear boundaries. If a boat is repeatedly crashing into you, you must move. But the practice of seeing the other boat as empty is a profound strategy for your own freedom. Your anger, your bitterness, your obsessive resentment, these emotions are chains that bind you to the collision, forcing you to relive it again and again. They are poisons you drink, hoping in vain that the other person will suffer. When you can genuinely see the other boat as empty, you are released from this self-inflicted torment. The anger has no pilot to attach to. The blame has no home. You can then deal with the situation's aftermath from a place of clarity, wisdom, and even compassion, rather than from a place of blind, reactive rage. You set yourself free. However, the deepest teaching of this parable goes one step further. The ultimate practice is not just to see other boats as empty, but to dare to empty your own boat. Chuang Tzu says, "Who can free himself from achievement and from fame and descend and be lost amid the masses of men? He will flow like Tao, unseen. He will be the empty boat." Most of us spend our entire lives doing the exact opposite. We are constantly loading our boat, filling it to the brim with precious cargo. We fill it with our identity. I am a doctor. I am a mother. I am an artist. I am a success. We fill it with our accomplishments, our degrees, our awards, our promotions, the balance in our bank account. We fill it with our story, our past triumphs, and our cherished wounds, which we use to define who we are today. And we fill it with our opinions, our beliefs, our political affiliations, our absolute certainty that our view of the world is the correct one. Our boat becomes heavy, overloaded, and incredibly precious to us. It becomes our ego, and because it is so full and so precious, We are in a constant state of anxiety, desperately trying to protect it. When another boat bumps into us, our reaction is explosive because the collision feels like a threat to our very being. If someone criticizes our work, they are not just criticizing a report, they are attacking our identity as a competent professional. If someone questions our opinion, they are not just questioning an idea, they are attacking our identity as an intelligent person. To empty your own boat is the path of letting go. It is the courageous act of loosening your white-knuckled grip on this constructed self. It is the gradual realization that you are not your job title. You are not your achievements. You are not your past. You are not your opinions. These are all just cargo you are carrying. Your true nature is not the boat, and certainly not its cargo. Your true nature is the vast, silent, aware space the river itself in which the boat and all its drama appears. When your own boat is empty, you become fluid, resilient, and unbelievably free. Insults have nothing to stick to. They pass right through you, like the wind. Criticism can be heard and evaluated for its usefulness. Without it, bruising a fragile ego. The praise and blame of the world become like the weather, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, but unable to disturb the quiet depths of your being. You can navigate the river of life with an effortless grace, because you are no longer burdened by the exhausting task of protecting a precious, imaginary self. You are simply flowing. So, the next time a boat collides with yours, try this practice. In that moment, between the impact and your reaction, take one deep, conscious breath. This is the sacred pause. First, look at the other boat. Ask with genuine curiosity, what invisible currents might be pushing their boat? What fear or pain might be at their helm? You don't have to know the answer. The question itself is an act of compassion that creates space. Then, turn your gaze inward. Look at your own vessel. Ask, what of my precious cargo is feeling threatened right now? Is it my pride, my need to be right, my image, my sense of control? See this self, not as you, but as something you are carrying. In that moment of seeing, can you loosen your grip just a little? Can you let that piece of cargo go and feel your own boat become just a little bit lighter, a little bit emptier? In that emptiness, you will not find a void of nothingness. You will discover the peace of the entire river. You will find the freedom that has been waiting for you all along, beneath the stormy surface of your own mind. 5. Nansen cuts the cat. The path of Zen is not always one of gentle streams and soft moonlight. There are times when the path leads to a precipice, a sheer drop designed to shatter our complacency. Some teachings are not meant to comfort, but to confront. They are a sudden clap of thunder in a silent hall, a dose of bitter medicine intended to shock the mind out of the deep slumber of its own illusions. The story of the Master Nansen and the cat is perhaps the most famous and the most disturbing of these teachings. It is a story that challenges our conventional morality and forces us to stare into the abyss of our own attachments. To understand the story, we must first picture the setting. A Zen monastery is a place consecrated to harmony, a container for silence and shared practice. The gentle sweeping of floors, the silent meals, the unified chanting goal are designed to quiet the ego and foster a sense of collective awakening. Into this sacred quiet, imagine the grating, ugly sound of a human argument. It started in the kitchens and spilled out into the garden. A bitter dispute between the monks of the Eastern Hall and the Western Hall. The object of their conflict, sitting innocently at the center of this storm of human ego, was a small, ordinary cat. One group of monks claimed the cat belonged to them. Perhaps they had found it or fed it first. The other group insisted the cat was theirs, that it preferred their hall. The argument grew louder, more heated. Voices were raised, faces flushed with anger. The cat, this small living creature, ceased to be a cat. It became a symbol. It was a symbol of possession, of being right, of group pride. The argument was no longer about the cat. It was about us versus them. It was a turf war of the spirit. This seemingly trivial squabble was a perfect microcosm of all human conflict, from family feuds to warring nations. The sacred harmony of the monastery, the very purpose of their life there, was being torn by their clinging to the idea of mine. Hearing the commotion, the great master Nansen emerged. His presence commanded immediate silence. He walked into the center of the dispute, picked up the cat with one hand, and with the other, he produced a sharp blade, some say, a scythe, or a kitchen knife. The air grew thick with tension. Holding the frightened animal aloft for all the silenced monks to see, he laid down his ultimatum. "You monks," his voice cut through the tension, "if any of you can say a true word of Zen, you will save this cat. If you cannot, I will cut it in two." Imagine the state of the monks. They were utterly paralyzed. This was not a test they had studied for. Nansen was not asking for a quote from a sutra or a clever philosophical answer. He was demanding a true word, a living, breathing, spontaneous demonstration of enlightened mind. He was asking for a response that could leap out of the dualistic trap of the argument, right versus wrong, my side versus your side, and resolve the conflict from a higher plane of consciousness. Their minds must have raced in a panic. Should I speak of emptiness? Of non-duality? Should I say, all things are one? But any such statement, coming from a mind still caught in the conflict, would be a dead word, a hollow concept. It would be an idea about Zen, not the living reality of it. They were scholars of peace, yet they had been creators of conflict. They were students of non-attachment, yet they were fiercely attached to a cat. Their knowledge had become a cage, trapped between the master's terrible challenge and their own inner emptiness. They stood silent. No one could produce the true word. And so Nansen, true to his word, swiftly cut the cat in two. The act is horrifying. It strikes us as cruel, immoral, the very antithesis of Buddhist compassion. To understand its purpose, we must step beyond the literal. The koan is not a historical record advocating for animal cruelty. It is a piece of radical spiritual theater. The cat had, in a sense, already been cut in two by the monk's argument. Their dualistic thinking, their ego-driven conflict, had already severed the unity and life of the monastery. Nansen's shocking, violent act was not the primary violence in the story. It was a reflection. He simply made the invisible, psychological violence of their ego, clinging starkly, unforgettably visible. He held up a bloody mirror to their own minds, forcing them to see the brutal consequences of their small attachments. He was saying, "Look, this is what your need to be right does. It kills. It destroys life." Later that evening, Nansen's most brilliant and liberated disciple, Joshu, returned from working in the fields. Nansen, still heavy with the day's events, recounted the story, to him the argument, the challenge, the silence, the killing of the cat. He then looked at his student and asked, "If you had been there, what would you have done?" Joshu did not hesitate for a single second. He did not offer a profound spiritual aphorism. He did not condemn or condone his master. Instead, he simply bent down, slipped off one of his muddy sandals, placed it squarely on top of his head, and silently walked away. A deep sigh escaped Nansen's lips. "If only you had been here," he said. "You could have saved the cat." Joshu's response is the true word in action. It is utterly absurd, illogical, and nonsensical, and that is precisely its genius. It is a perfect demonstration of a mind that is completely free. By placing his sandal on his head, Joshu stepped outside the entire framework of the problem. His action was not for the East Hall or for the West Hall. It was not a solution to the argument. It was a dissolution of the argument. It was a blast of holy foolishness that would have instantly shattered the grim, self-important seriousness of the conflict. He would have made the monks laugh. And in that laughter, their rigid, clinging egos would have relaxed, and the argument would have evaporated. His action was a living demonstration of non-attachment. A sandal belongs on a foot. A hat belongs on a head. Our minds are full of these rigid, conventional rules. By playfully upending this simple convention, Joshu showed the arbitrary nature of all our conceptual boxes, including the box labeled, "This cat is mine." His mind was so fluid, so untethered, that he could respond to a life and death situation with the playful freedom of a child. This was the living, breathing Zen that Nansen had demanded. This was the response that could have saved the cat, not by winning the argument, but by healing the diseased minds of the arguers. This koan is a powerful, if difficult, mirror for our own lives. We are constantly fighting over cats. Our cat might be a political ideology that we defend with righteous fury on social media. It might be our need to be proven right in a disagreement with our ner. It might be a closely held opinion about how things should be done at work. We cling to these positions as if our very lives depend on them, and in doing so, we create division, stress, and suffering. We cut the cat every day in our relationships, in our workplaces, and in our own hearts. The koan asks us, can you say a true word? Can you find a Joshu response to the conflicts in your life? This doesn't mean you should literally put your shoe on your head during your next board meeting. It means looking for a response that transcends the binary of winning and losing. It could be a moment of unexpected humility in a heated debate. It could be an act of disarming kindness towards someone you perceive as an adversary. It could be the use of gentle, self-deprecating humor to diffuse a tense situation. It could be the simple, courageous act of saying, you know what, this isn't important enough to damage our relationship, and consciously letting go of your need to be right. Any action that steps off the battlefield, that refuses to play the game of ego versus ego, is a true word. The great challenge presented by Nansen is that our spiritual knowledge is useless if it remains as mere information in our heads. It must be embodied. It must become so much a of us that we can respond to life's crises, not with a pre-programmed answer, but with spontaneous, creative, and liberating wisdom. The story is a bitter medicine, meant to be swallowed whole. It shocks us into seeing the lethal potential of our own ego. It urges us to find the courage to let go of our desperate clinging, to see the absurdity in our most cherished conflicts, and to discover the freedom and playful wisdom of a mind like Joshu's. It is a call to save the countless cats in our own lives by realizing that true peace is never found in owning, but only in letting go. 6. A cup of tea. Voiceover. In our modern world, we have become curators of knowledge. We are all, in our own way, professors. We carry supercomputers in our pockets that give us access to the sum of human information. Before we try a new restaurant, we read dozens of reviews. Before we learn a new skill, we watch hours of tutorials. Before we even dare to have an opinion, We arm ourselves with articles, studies, and podcasts to support our position. We build intricate castles of intellect, decorated with the furniture of facts, figures, and well-reasoned arguments. We believe, deep down, that the path to a better life is paved with more information. We think that if we can just understand everything, if we can just figure it all out, then we can finally be safe, happy, and in control. Our minds become like a meticulously organized library, where every experience is catalogued, cross-referenced, and filed away under a pre-existing label. We mistake the catalogue for the living, breathing world itself. This intellectual armor feels like a strength, but in reality, it can become a prison. It walls us off from the raw, unmediated, and often surprising beauty of direct experience. We become so busy analyzing the menu of life that we forget to taste the food. This condition, this affliction of the expert mind, is at the heart of one of the most elegant and famous stories in Zen. It tells of a university professor, a man of great learning and intellectual renown, who embarked on a journey to visit a secluded Zen master named Nanin. He didn't go as a humble student, but more as a peer reviewer, a scholar on a research trip. He wanted to inquire about Zen, to add it to his vast collection of philosophical knowledge. From the moment he was ushered into the master's simple, uncluttered room, the professor began to speak. He didn't ask questions. He made statements. He launched into a dazzling monologue, showcasing the breadth of his learning. He spoke of the connections he had found between Buddhist sutras and Western philosophy. He offered his own complex theories on the nature of consciousness, the illusion of self, and the meaning of emptiness. He was a fountain of concepts, a torrent of words. He wasn't there to listen. He was there to demonstrate that he had already arrived. Nanin, the master, listened with a patient and profound silence. His quiet was not empty. It was spacious. It was a vast, receptive field in which the professor's frantic intellectual energy could exhaust itself. As the professor talked on and on, Nanin calmly began the ritual of preparing tea. His movements were simple, deliberate, and full of grace. He handled the teapot, the whisk, the cups, with complete, undivided attention. Each action was a teaching in itself, though the professor, lost in his own head, failed to notice. Finally, Nanin placed a delicate ceramic cup before his learned guest. He lifted the iron teapot and began to pour the steaming, fragrant green tea. The cup filled. The dark liquid reached the brim, a perfect, still surface. And then, Nanin continued to pour. The tea crested the lip of the cup and began to spill over, cascading down its side, forming a dark, spreading pool in the saucer. The professor watched, his brow furrowed in confusion. Still, Nanin pour. The saucer filled, and the tea began to drip onto the simple wooden table, wasting the precious drink and creating a mess. The professor's academic composure finally broke. He could no longer restrain himself. "Stop," he shouted, gesturing at the overflowing disaster. "It is overfull. The cup is full. No more will go in." Nanin paused his pouring. He placed the teapot down gently. He looked into the professor's agitated eyes, not with judgment, but with a deep, penetrating compassion. And he said, quietly, "Like this cup, you are full. You are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is a perfect scalpel, cutting through the core illusion of the intellectual ego. The professor is all of us when we are trapped in the mode of knowing. His cup was brimming, not just with academic knowledge, but with a whole host of contents that we all carry. It was full of opinions, assumptions, and preconceived notions. It was full of past experiences that had hardened into rigid beliefs about how the world works. It was full of the pride of being an expert, an identity he was constantly working to uphold. His self was this full cup, and he guarded it jealously. The act of the master was not one of rudeness, it was one of supreme kindness. It was a direct, physical demonstration of the professor's own inner state. He was showing the professor, in a way that no words could, that his mind was so saturated with his own ideas that there was simply no room for anything new to enter. Any wisdom the master could offer would just spill over, wasted, unable to be received. The state of mind that Zen practice aims to cultivate is what is known as Shoshin, or beginner's mind. The Zen master Shunryu Suzuki, who was pivotal in bringing these teachings to America, said it best. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Beginner's mind is the empty cup. It is a mind that is open, curious, and free from the tyranny of its own conclusions. It is the wonder of a child tasting a strawberry for the very first time, experiencing it fully, without comparing it to other berries they have tasted. The expert mind, by contrast, tastes the strawberry and immediately thinks, "Ah, yes, a strawberry, not as sweet as the one I had last week. A bit mushier than the ideal, probably from a different region." It analyzes, it compares, it judges. It never truly tastes the strawberry that is right here, right now. To cultivate a beginner's mind does not mean becoming ignorant or stupid. The professor's knowledge was not the problem. The problem was his attachment to it, his identification with it. The problem was his inability to set his knowledge aside, even for a moment, to encounter something or someone fresh. An astrophysicist with a beginner's mind can still possess all their vast knowledge of the cosmos, but they can look up at the night sky and be struck with the same silent, speechless awe as a child. They have the humility to know that what they know is but a tiny island in a vast ocean of mystery. So, how do we, in our practical, day-to-day lives, begin to empty our cup? This is not a one-time act, but a continuous, moment-to-moment practice. The meditation cushion is the primary training ground. When you sit down to simply watch your breath, you are committing to the practice of emptying. Your cup will immediately try to fill itself. A memory from yesterday, a plan for tomorrow, a judgment about the meditation itself, a sudden opinion about the temperature of the room. This is the tea of your mind, constantly pouring. The practice is not to dam the flow or get angry at it. The practice is to notice it, acknowledge it. Thinking, and then gently, like tipping the cup ever so slightly, let it go and return your attention to the simple, physical sensation of the breath. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the muscle of non-attachment. You are practicing the art of creating space. This practice then spills over into life. In your conversations, can you listen with the sole intention of understanding rather than listening with the intention of reloading for your reply? Can you become an empty cup for the other person's experience? This one shift can transform a relationship from a debate into a communion. In your work, when faced with a problem, can you let go of the need to have the answer immediately? Can you have the courage to say, "I don't know," and to sit in that open space of not knowing, allowing for a truly creative, unexpected solution to emerge, rather than just applying the same old formula that has worked in the past? The promise of the empty cup is not a void. It is not nihilism. It is the promise of being able to be truly filled with a genuine, experiential understanding that is deeper than mere book knowledge, filled with a rich and authentic connection to others, because you are finally able to truly hear them, and filled with the profound, simple, and often overlooked beauty of the present moment, which we so often miss because our cup is already overflowing with the stale, lukewarm tea of our own thoughts. Nan's overflowing cup was an act of profound grace. It was a loving invitation to the professor and to all of us. It was a call to awaken from the dream of knowing and to enter the living reality of learning. The master is always here, in this very moment, ready to pour the fresh tea of reality. The only question is our cup ready to receive it? What are you so full of right now that you are missing the wonder that is right in front of you? Do you have the courage to pour some of it out? 7. The true master. In our culture of endless self-improvement, we are seekers of secrets. We are constantly searching for that one piece of missing information, that life hack, that hidden technique that will unlock our potential and solve our problems. We buy the books promising the 7 habits of highly effective people. We subscribe to the podcasts that reveal the morning routines of billionaires. We search for the 5 steps to happiness, the 3 keys to a successful relationship. We are all, in our own way, that young, ambitious martial artist, standing at the foot of a mountain, believing that a great master holds a secret blueprint to power and enlightenment, a treasure that can be passed from their hands into ours. We believe mastery is something we can get, but the wisdom of Zen offers a radically different perspective. It suggests that true mastery is not something we acquire, but something we uncover. It is not about learning a secret technique. It is about transforming the one who learns. There is a powerful story that illustrates this. A young, fiercely ambitious man, renowned for his natural talent with a sword, decided he would settle for nothing less than becoming the greatest swordsman in the entire empire. After much searching, he discovered the whereabouts of a legendary Zen sword master, a man whose skill was said to be almost supernatural. The young man undertook a long and arduous journey, his mind filled with heroic visions of the training to come off secret scrolls, of complex katas practiced under waterfalls, of lightning-fast sparring sessions that would hone his skills to a razor's edge. Finally, he arrived, weary but full of hope, at a simple, rustic hut on a remote mountainside. There he found the master, not a formidable warrior, but a quiet, unassuming old man. The young man bowed low, his voice filled with determination. "Master, I have come to be your student. I am ready to endure any hardship, to dedicate my entire being to learning your secrets. I will do whatever it takes to become the best." The old master looked at the fire in the young man's eyes and with a simple nod accepted him. The young man's heart soared. The training was about to begin. But the training was a profound disappointment. There were no lessons in swordsmanship. There were no secret techniques revealed. Instead, the master put him to work on the most mundane, repetitive chores imaginable. From before sunrise until long after sunset, the young man's life became a cycle of chopping wood for the fire, carrying heavy buckets of water from a distant well, tending the small vegetable garden, sweeping the floors, and cooking their simple meals. Days bled into weeks, and weeks into months. The young man's initial enthusiasm curdled into a bitter frustration. His muscles ached, his hands were calloused, and his spirit chafed. "I am a warrior," he would think to himself, "not a servant. I came here to master the sword, not the broom. Has this old man forgotten me? Is this some kind of cruel joke?" Just as his frustration was reaching its peak, the nature of his training changed, but not in the way he had hoped. One afternoon, As he was in the kitchen, sullenly chopping radishes for their dinner, his mind, a million miles away, lost in fantasies of glorious sword fights, the master snuck up behind him and, without a single word, delivered a sharp, painful whack across his back with a wooden practice sword. The young man yelped in pain and shock, spinning around to see the master retreating silently into the shadows. This became the new routine. The attacks were relentless and completely unpredictable. At any moment, when he was least expecting it, the master would appear and strike. When the young man was washing his face in the morning, a blow would land on his shoulders. When he was mending the thatched roof, a whack would come to his legs. When he was drifting off to sleep, he would be jolted awake by the sting of the master's sword. This seemingly cruel and sadistic training had a precise and compassionate purpose. The master was not trying to hurt the student. He was trying to awaken him. The sharp, sudden pain of the wooden sword was a radical mindfulness bell. It was a constant, undeniable demand from reality to be here now. The student could no longer afford the luxury of a wandering mind. He could no longer drift into daydreams of future glory or wallow in resentments about his past. To do so meant immediate, physical pain. He was forced, out of sheer self-preservation, to bring his entire consciousness into the present moment. His awareness began to change. At first, it was a tense, fearful, hyper-vigilance. But he soon realized he couldn't live in a constant state of knotted tension. It was too exhausting. His awareness had to transform from a tight focus into a wide, relaxed, 360-degree field of receptivity. He had to become one with his environment. His senses became incredibly sharp. He learned to hear the subtle creak of a floorboard under the master's foot. He learned to feel the slight shift of air as a figure moved behind him. He learned to see a shadow in his periphery, not as a distraction, but as vital information. His mind, once a noisy hall of ambition and frustration, had to become a vast, silent space, just to listen. One morning, well over a year into his training, the student was in the kitchen, stirring a large pot of simmering soup. He was not on guard. He was not tense. He was simply, completely absorbed in the act of stirring. He felt the circular motion in his arm, smelled the aroma of the vegetables, heard the gentle bubbling of the broth. In that moment, he was not a frustrated warrior or an aspiring master. He was just a man stirring soup. The master, seeing this state of deep absorption, decided it was time for the final test. He crept into the kitchen, his movements as silent as a cat. He raised his wooden sword high, preparing to bring it down with full force. But this time, something different happened. The student did not turn. He did not flinch. He did not even break the gentle rhythm of his stirring. In one single, fluid, and completely spontaneous motion, he simply lifted the heavy wooden lid of the pot and angled it perfectly to intercept the blow. The master's sword struck the lid with a dull thud. There was no thought, no plan, no separation between sensing the attack and blocking it. The action arose from a place deeper than thought. It was pure, instantaneous, and perfect. The master lowered his sword. A rare, deep smile spread across his face. "You are ready," he said. The student had finally learned the master's greatest secret. The secret was that there were no secrets. The true mastery he sought was not in the sword, nor in any special technique. It was in the mind of the one holding the sword. It was a state of being known in Zen as mushin, or no mind. It is not a state of blankness, but a mind that is free from the interference of the self-conscious, judging, thinking, ego. It is the state of flow, where the doer and the doing become one. It is the state of the great musician lost in her music, the great athlete in the zone, where peak performance arises effortlessly from a silent mind. The mundane chores were the true training all along. The famous Zen saying goes, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." The activities of our lives do not need to change. What changes is the quality of awareness we bring to them. Your life, right now, is the dojo. Your demanding job is the master's training ground. Your chaotic family life is the arena for practice. Answering 100 emails is chopping wood. Calming a crying child is carrying water. Life itself provides the master's wooden sword. The unexpected crisis at work, the sudden illness of a loved one, the car that breaks down on the highway. These are not random inconveniences that ruin our quest for peace. They are the training. They are life's unannounced attacks, waking us up from our mental slumber, demanding our full presence. Can we meet these moments with relaxed awareness and respond with clarity? Or do we meet them with panicked, reactive thought? The true technique is simply to practice presence in the small, ordinary moments. When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water. See the iridescent soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plates. Don't be washing the dishes while mentally arguing with your boss or planning your vacation. Be fully there. By training our attention in these peaceful moments, we build the muscle of presence. Then, when the attacks of life inevitably come, we have the strength and stability to respond from a place of centered calm, rather than being knocked off balance. The young man came seeking to be given mastery from an external source. He left having discovered that the ultimate master was his own awakened awareness, a potential that had been within him all along. The secret we are all looking for is not out there. It is right here. It is woven into the very fabric of your ordinary life. The ultimate technique is not to learn something new, but to simply pay attention to what you are already doing. The true master is to be found in your own, present, silent mind. 8. The goose in the bottle. Have you ever felt truly and utterly stuck? It is a uniquely human form of suffering, a feeling that the walls of your life are slowly closing in. It's the feeling of running in a dream, your legs churning in slow motion, while the destination never gets any closer. It is the quiet panic of being trapped. For some, this feeling is concrete. A career that pays the bills, but drains the soul. A cage, gilded, with financial security. For others, it's a relationship that has become a familiar but lifeless room, where the door seems to have disappeared. And for many of us, the prison is more intimate. It is the bottle of our own mind, the relentless cycle of anxiety, the heavy anchor of depression, the recurring ghost of past trauma. We feel defined by our predicament, believing that the shape of our bottle is the shape of our self. We then spend our lives consumed with the problem of the bottle. We strategize, we struggle, we push against the glass walls, searching for a clever way to escape. We believe that if we can just change our external circumstances, find a new job, a new a new city, we can finally break free. But so often, we find that we have only traded one bottle for another, of a different shape. The fundamental feeling of being trapped remains. This desperate struggle, this profound misunderstanding of where the walls of our prison truly lie, is at the very heart of a brilliant and perplexing Zen koan. A Zen master named Rikyu, known for his sharp and incisive teachings, posed this problem to one of his students. He presented the scenario, perhaps with a simple gesture, painting a picture in the student's mind. Imagine, he began, that a man places a tiny gosling inside a glass bottle. He feeds it every day through the narrow neck. The goose grows and grows, until one day it is a full-sized goose. It now completely fills the bottle, and it is far too large to fit back through the opening. The master then leaned in, his gaze steady. Here is the problem. Without harming the goose in any way, and without breaking the bottle, how do you get it out? Take a moment to truly sit with this riddle. Let your own logical mind grapple with it. The conditions are absolute. The glass cannot be shattered. The goose cannot be hurt. But the physical reality is that the goose is larger than the opening. The intellect immediately runs into a solid wall. It's a paradox, a perfectly constructed logical cage. The mind, being the problem-solving machine that it is, will begin to frantically search for a loophole. We can imagine the student's mind racing, just as ours does. Well, he might have ventured. Perhaps if we use some kind of oil or lubricant, we could slide the goose out. The master would shake his head. It is too large. The student, thinking harder, might suggest, what if we starve the goose until it becomes smaller? That would be harming the goose. The master would reply, what if we use mirrors to trick the goose into finding some hidden exit? What if there's a secret technique to momentarily deconstruct matter? Each clever, desperate solution would be met with a silent refusal. The student's struggle is our struggle. We are trying to solve a problem of one dimension, a metaphysical one, with the tools of another, the physical and logical. We are all trying to figure out how to re-engineer the bottle. The student, having exhausted every conceivable trick his intellect could devise, would eventually fall silent, defeated. He is now himself, the goose in the bottle, trapped by the apparent impossibility of the problem. It is only at this point, when the student's conceptual mind has completely surrendered, that the true teaching can begin. Seeing that his student had reached the end of his intellectual rope, the master suddenly, without warning, leaned forward and shouted his student's name, a sharp, penetrating sound that cut through the quiet room. Kenji, startled out of his frustrated trance, the student instinctively and immediately replied, "Yes, master." A slow smile spread across the master's face. He nodded gently and declared, "There, it's out. What on earth just happened?" There was no magic, no trickery. There was a profound shift in perception. The goose in the bottle is a metaphor for our true nature, our original self, that vast, free, boundless awareness that is our essence. This true self has never been confined, has never been trapped, has never been born, and will never die. It is inherently and eternally free. The bottle is the story of me. It is the structure of the ego, a prison we build for ourselves, thought by thought. The glass of the bottle is forged from the stories we tell ourselves and believe to be true. I am my body is one pane of glass. I am my personality, which is anxious and not good enough, is another. I am my past, with all of its unchangeable mistakes, is another. I am my current problemy, difficult job, my loneliness, my illness. This becomes the very neck of the bottle through which we view the entire world. We live our lives believing that we are this story, that we are inside this bottle. The suffering we feel comes not from the external circumstances themselves, but from our unshakable belief that we are trapped by them. The student was trapped in the problem as long as he accepted its premise. He was trying to find a solution within the story. The master's sudden shout, "Kenji," was a radical pattern interrupt. It was not of the story. It was a direct call, not to the character of Kenji, the student who is trying to solve a riddle, but to the pure, immediate, aware presence that existed before the riddle was ever posed. In that split second of instinctive response, "Yes, master?" Where was the goose? Where was the bottle? Where was the problem? In that moment of pure, unmediated presence, the entire conceptual framework of the problem vanished. The story of Kenji, the trapped thinker, disappeared, and all that was left was simple, direct awareness responding to a sound. The goose was out, because Kenji was momentarily out of his own conceptual mind. He was experiencing reality directly, without the filtering, judging, and problem-making story of his ego. This is the great secret. The feeling of being trapped is a thought. It is a story. It is not the ultimate reality. The path to freedom is not about breaking the bottle of our life circumstances, but about seeing that the bottle is a mental construct. How can we apply this in our own lives? We can learn to create our own master's shout. First, identify your bottle. Take a moment right now. What is the primary situation in your life where you feel trapped? Name it. Feel its walls. Acknowledge the feeling of confinement it produces in your body and mind. Second, listen to the thoughts that form the glass of the bottle. Pay attention to the specific sentences your mind repeats. I can never leave this job. I'm not qualified for anything else. I will always be anxious. It's just how I'm wired. It's too late for me to change. This situation is impossible. See these thoughts not as objective truths, but as the building materials of the prison. Now, here is the practice. In the very midst of feeling trapped by that story, you can create a pattern interrupt. You can shift your attention, gently ask yourself a different kind of question. Who or what is aware of this feeling of being trapped? Don't try to answer it with words. Just let the question shift your focus from the feeling itself to the awareness of the feeling. Or, even more simply, bring your entire, undivided attention to the physical sensation of your breath moving in and out of your body. Feel the air at your nostrils. Feel your belly rise and fall. Or, listen. Just listen to the sounds in the room right now. The hum of a computer, a distant siren, the sound of your own breathing without labeling them. In that instant that your attention is fully absorbed in the raw data of the present moment, where is the bottle? It dissolves. You get a glimpse, a taste of the open space. That feeling of relief, however fleeting, is the goose flying free. It is the taste of your own unbound nature. The ultimate teaching of this koan is the most liberating of all. It is that the goose was never in the bottle to begin with. The entire problem was a fabrication of the mind. Our freedom is not a future achievement. It is our present reality. Our essential nature has always been as free and vast as the open sky. The work is not to break free, but to awaken to the freedom that is already here. The prison door has been unlocked the entire time. All we have to do is stop staring at the imaginary walls and walk out. 9. Joshua's Mew. Our minds are instruments of division. From the moment we awaken, we begin to slice the world into pieces. This is good. That is bad. This is right. That is wrong. I like this. I dislike that. We navigate our lives through a relentless series of yeses and nos. This binary code is the operating system of the ego. It gives us a sense of certainty, of control, of understanding. We believe that if we can just categorize everything correctly, place every experience into its proper box, we can make sense of the universe and our place within it. But this constant act of judgment, this carving of a seamless reality into a million conflicting fragments, is also the very source of our deepest anxieties and conflicts. The path of Zen, however, points to a reality that exists before this division, a truth that cannot be captured by yes or no. And there is no greater tool for pointing to this truth, no koan, more fundamental, more famous, or more profoundly impenetrable than the koan of Mu. It is often the very first gate a student of Rinzai Zen is asked to pass through, and it is a gate that can take a lifetime to open. The story itself is deceptively simple. A monk, his mind filled with earnest questions about the Dharma, approached the great Chinese Zen master Zhaozhou, known in Japan as Joshu. The monk asked a question that was central to the compassionate worldview of Mahayana Buddhism. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Now, this was not a casual or trivial inquiry. The doctrine of Buddha nature is a cornerstone of Buddhist philosophy. It is the radical and deeply hopeful teaching that all sentient beings, every human, every animal, every insect, every blade of grass, possess the same essential nature as the Buddha himself. It means that within every being lies the luminous, inherent potential for complete and perfect enlightenment. So, for any student of the scriptures, for anyone versed in the doctrine, the correct answer to the monk's question is an immediate and unequivocal yes. Of course, a dog has Buddha nature. All beings do. The monk was expecting this yes. He was ready to receive it, categorize it, and file it away in his mind as another confirmed fact about the universe. But Joshu did not say yes. He looked at the monk, and from the depths of his awakened mind, he uttered a single syllable, mu, in Chinese, where it is wu, and in Japanese, mu, is a word that literally means no, not, or nothingness. But to interpret Joshu's response as a simple negation, no, a dog does not have Buddha nature, is to miss the point entirely. To say that would be to contradict centuries of Buddhist teaching and to create a new, empty dogma. Joshu was not engaged in a theological debate. He was performing spiritual surgery. The monk's mind, like ours, was operating on the dualistic plane. He had a concept in his head called dog. He had another concept called Buddha nature, and his question was an attempt to stick these two concepts together with intellectual glue. Does this thing have that quality? He was treating Buddha nature as a possession, an attribute that something either has or does not have, like a dog having fur or a tail. Joshu's mu is a spiritual sledgehammer to this entire way of thinking. It is not an answer within the monk's yes, no system. It is a word that utterly demolishes the system itself. It is a direct and compassionate refusal to play the ego's game. Joshu is saying, your question is born from a divided mind, and therefore, any answer I give you will only deepen your confusion. You are trying to catch the vast ocean of reality in the tiny teacup of your intellect. Stop it. Mu, asks the question. It points to the fact that the very act of asking, does a dog have Buddha nature, creates a separation between the dog and Buddha, nature that does not exist in reality. When a Zen student is given this koan to work with, the instructions are very specific, and for a Western mind, very strange. The master does not say, go and think about what mu means. He says, you must become one with mu. The practice is to pour the entirety of one's being into this single point. In sitting meditation, with every exhalation, the student focuses on this one sound, mu. They are not to analyze it. They are not to ask what it means. They are to let mu fill their entire consciousness, to let it absorb every other thought, feeling, and sensation. The purpose of this intense, seemingly absurd practice is to exhaust the intellect. The thinking mind, the ego, cannot grasp mu. It is like trying to pick up a perfectly smooth steel ball with your bare hands. The mind tries to get a foothold, Does it mean emptiness? Is it a mantra? Is it a denial? Is it a statement about the limitations of language? All these are just the intellect's desperate attempts to turn mu back into a concept, to file it away in one of its boxes. The practice is to relentlessly drop the analysis and return to the raw sensation of mu itself. As the student continues this practice for weeks, months, even years, a profound process of emptying occurs. The constant inner chatter, the voice in the head that narrates and judges everything, begins to quiet down, starved of the attention it needs to survive. And in its place, something else begins to grow. The great doubt. This is not ordinary skepticism. It is a deep, existential doubt that begins to permeate the student's entire being. The impenetrable wall of mu makes the student begin to doubt the competency of their own mind, the very foundation of their perception of reality. If I cannot understand this one simple word, what do I truly know about anything? They become a walking, talking question mark. This state is deeply uncomfortable and disorienting, but it is the necessary crucible for a breakthrough. It is the point of maximum tension. Then, at some point perhaps during meditation, or while doing a simple task like washing a bowl when the great doubt has reached its peak, and the student has poured every last drop of their energy into this one koan, the ball of doubt shatters. This is the experience of kensho, or enlightenment. It is not that they have suddenly figured out the answer. It is that the questioner, the separate I, who was trying to figure it out, has momentarily dissolved. In that moment of breakthrough, they directly experience what mu is pointing to. They see with the clarity of their whole being that there is no dog separate from Buddha nature. There is just this seamless, vibrant, unnameable reality, manifesting as dog, as monk, as master, as sunlight. The question, does a dog have Buddha nature, becomes profoundly, laughably absurd. It's like asking, does water have wetness, nature, or does the sky have sky, nature? The question itself was the only thing obscuring the obvious, ever-present truth. Mu is called the gateless gate. You cannot pry it open with the crowbar of your intellect or unlock it with the key of your logic. The only way through the gate is to become so small, so empty, that you can pass through the non-existent opening. The only way is to dissolve the self that perceives a gate in the first place. So how do we bring the spirit of this profound practice into our daily lives? We can use mu as a quiet, internal tool to disarm our own judging minds. When you find yourself caught in a loop of harsh, dualistic thought, this is a terrible situation. I am a complete failure. That person is wrong. You can meet that thought not with an argument, but with the silent energy of mu. You are not suppressing the thought or denying it. You are simply refusing to give it your belief. You are refusing to add a second layer of judgment to the raw experience. You cut the fuel line to the story. Pain arises in your body. The mind immediately labels it. This is bad. I hate this. It shouldn't be here. This labeling is the second arrow that causes the true suffering. The practice is to be with the raw sensation, and when the labels arise, to meet them with a quiet, internal mu, a simple no to the story, and a yes to the present reality of the sensation itself. In a world that demands we take a side on every issue, that we be either for or against, mu represents the liberating third option, the wisdom to not become entangled in every battle our ego wants to fight. It is the sound of reality before we have carved it up with our words and concepts. It is the ultimate no to the ego's incessant demands. and the ultimate yes to the deep, silent, and boundless truth of who you really are. 10. The first principle. Within the human heart lies a deep and ancient longing for the big answer. We search for a grand, unifying truth that will make sense of the beautiful, chaotic, and often painful symphony of our existence. We call this ultimate truth by many names: God, Tao, Brahman, the nature of reality. In Buddhism, it is sometimes called the first principle, the absolute, the source, the unshakable ground of being from which all things arise and to which all things return. Our search for this principle typically leads us down two main paths. The first is the path of the intellect, the path of the philosopher and the theologian. We read the sacred texts, we study the commentaries, we build complex mental models of the cosmos. We believe that if we can just think hard enough, learn enough, and construct the perfect theory, we can grasp the first principle with our minds. The second path is that of the mystic, who seeks a grand, experiential breakthrough, a blinding vision, an altered state of consciousness, a heavensing moment of ecstatic union. Both paths, in their own way, often share a common assumption that the first principle is something magnificent, remote, and separate from the mundane texture of our ordinary lives. It is something to be achieved, attained, or understood. But Zen offers a third path, a path so simple and so direct that it is often completely overlooked. This path is illuminated perfectly in a famous encounter with the Zen master Tokusan. A new governor had been appointed to the province where Tokusan resided. This governor was not just a politician. He was a sincere and dedicated student of Buddhism. He had spent years poring over the sutras, the dense and profound scriptures of the faith. He was a man of great intellect and sophistication, accustomed to dealing with complex systems. Having studied all he could, he felt he was ready for the final piece of the puzzle. He sought out the master Tokusan with one purpose: to ask the ultimate question. After being led into the master's quiet presence, the governor bowed respectfully and stated his query. "I have read the scriptures and studied the commentaries," he said, his voice earnest and full of intellectual gravity. "They speak of the first principle of Buddhism, the ultimate truth, but their words are deep and often contradictory. I have come to you, great master, hoping you will teach me directly, what is the first principle?" This was it, the final question, the request for the crown jewel of all wisdom. The governor made himself ready, his mind a keen and sharpened instrument, prepared to receive a complex, profound, philosophical discourse. He expected a lecture on emptiness, a detailed explanation of the nature of mind, a revelation that would be the capstone of his years of study. Tokusan looked at the governor. He did not speak. In the face of this great, abstract question, he responded with profound and deliberate silence. Then, he began to move. He turned to his small tea set and began, with complete and undivided attention, to prepare a cup of tea. His every action was a sermon in itself, though the governor, waiting for words, could not hear it. Tokusan's movements were not casual. They were imbued with a deep, meditative presence. The way he handled the wooden scoop, the sound of the hot water being poured into the iron pot, the whisking of the powdered green tea into a frothy emerald liquid each moment, was complete, self-contained, and perfect. It was a symphony of the ordinary. Finally, the tea was ready. Tokusan poured it into a simple, beautiful cup. He held it out and presented it to the governor. The governor accepted the cup, his mind still waiting. He held the warm ceramic, inhaling the earthy fragrance of the tea, but his thoughts were elsewhere. anticipating the real teaching that was sure to follow this ritual. The tea, he assumed, was just a prelude. Tokusan finally broke the silence. He looked directly at the governor and asked a simple question. "Do you understand?" The governor was taken aback. Understand what? The master had said nothing. He had offered no explanation, no theory. He had simply made a cup of tea. Confused, the governor gave the only honest answer he could. "No," he said. "No, I don't understand." Tokusan let out a sigh, not of frustration, but perhaps of compassion. He turned away from the powerful governor and called to his young attendant, a boy named Juji, who was standing quietly nearby. "Juji, come here." The boy came forward, his eyes clear and his mind unburdened by years of philosophical study. Tokusan handed Juji the very same cup of tea he had offered the governor. He looked at the boy and said, with startling clarity and directness, "This is the first principle of Buddhism. Take it." The boy, Juji, did not look confused. He did not ask what the master meant. He did not try to analyze the statement. He heard the words. He saw the cup. Without a moment of hesitation, he simply took the cup of tea from the master's hands, brought it to his lips, and drank it. This story is a masterclass in direct pointing. The governor, for all his intelligence and sincerity, failed to grasp the teaching because he was looking for an idea. He was searching for a concept, a mental object labeled first principle, that he could add to his collection of knowledge. He believed the truth was something that could be talked about. He was so focused on waiting for the profound explanation that he completely missed the profound reality that was being physically offered to him. Tokusan's act of preparing and serving tea was not a symbol of the first principle. It was not a metaphor for it. It was the first principle, manifesting itself in the here and now. The ultimate, absolute reality is not a distant, abstract concept. It is this simple, concrete, undeniable, present moment reality. It is the warmth of the cup in your hands. It is the taste of the tea on your tongue. It is the feeling of your breath moving in and out of your body. It is the sound of the rain against the window pane. The great tragedy of our spiritual search is that we are like people dying of thirst while standing knee-deep in a flowing river, because we are looking for water with a special, holy label on it. We miss the sacredness of the ordinary because we are chasing the idea of the spectacular. The young attendant, Juji, embodied the beginner's mind. His cup was empty. He had no preconceived notions of what the first principle should look or sound like. He was not trying to understand the teaching. He was simply open to participating in it. When the master said, "This is the first principle, take it," Juji did not get stuck in his head. He responded with his whole body. He took it. He drank it. He made it of himself. He demonstrated, with perfect and simple grace, that the way to unite with ultimate reality is not to think about it, but to ingest it, to engage with it, to participate in it, fully and without reservation. This teaching is incredibly practical and liberating. It means you do not have to wait for a future moment of enlightenment. You do not have to achieve a special state. The first principle is continuously on offer, right in the midst of your messy, beautiful, ordinary life. When you are at your desk, feeling overwhelmed by stress and deadlines, what is the first principle? It is the solid feeling of your feet on the floor. It is the physical sensation of your fingers pressing the keys. It is the sight of the light from your monitor. Can you, just for one breath, let go of the story of your stress and simply land in the raw sensory reality of this moment? To do so is to touch the ground of being, It is to drink a sip of Tokusan's tea. When you are in a difficult conversation with a loved one, what is the first principle? It is the actual sound of their voice, separate from your interpretation. It is the feeling of your own heart beating. It is the awareness of the tension in your shoulders. Can you be present with this direct, embodied experience, without getting lost in the dramatic storyline of who is right and who is wrong? Life is constantly handing you this cup of tea. It is the taste of your morning coffee. It is the feeling of a warm hug from your child. It is the simple act of tying your shoes. But like the governor, we are often too preoccupied, too lost in thought, waiting for something more, something spiritual to notice. We are waiting for the lecture, and we are missing the life that is unfolding right in front of us. So, the invitation is this. For a few moments, give up the search. Stop trying to figure everything out. Stop looking for a big answer. Simply choose one ordinary, sensory experience that is happening right now. The feeling of the clothes against your skin, the taste of the air you are breathing, the intricate pattern of the wood grain on your table. Give it your full, undivided attention. Don't analyze it. Don't judge it. Just receive it. Let it be exactly what it is. This is it. This is the first principle. The only question is, will you drink it? 11. The stone mind. There is a deep-seated desire within us for an unshakable peace. In the face of a world that is constantly changing, flowing, and often chaotic, we yearn for an inner refuge, a place of solid ground within ourselves. We want to build a fortress in the mind, a citadel with walls so thick and foundations so deep that the storms of life, the anxieties, the disappointments, the losescan, batter against them in vain. We want to be stoic, to be resilient, to be imperturbable. We want, in essence, a mind like a stone. This aspiration is a noble one, but our approach to it is often misguided. We treat the mind as a construction project. We believe that through sheer force of will, through the acquisition of special techniques, or the reinforcement of positive thinking, we can build this inner fortress brick by brick. It becomes an exhausting, never-ending task of inner management, of constantly policing our thoughts and fighting our feelings, trying to force the fluid, dynamic process of the mind into a static, solid object. But Zen suggests a different path, not of construction, but of discovery. This is revealed in a profound exchange with the great master Zhaozhou, a monk, earnestly engaged in this very project of self-fortification, came to the master. He had been studying the scriptures and had become captivated by a powerful metaphor for the awakened mind. He approached Zhaozhou and asked, "The sutras speak of the mind that is like a great, unmoving stone. I wish to realize this state. Please, teach me, what is this stone mind?" The monk's question is our question. He has a concept, an ideal, that he is striving for. He sees his mind as one thing, oft, turbulent, and vulnerable, and he wants to transform it into another thing, hard, solid, and unshakable. He is asking for the blueprint to begin his construction project. He is looking for a technique to apply inside his own head. Zhaozhou, in his characteristically direct and unexpected way, gave a reply that seemed to completely ignore the question. He did not offer a meditation technique. He did not launch into a discourse on the nature of consciousness. He simply looked at the monk and said, "The stone is outside." Imagine the monk's confusion. It would be like asking a master psychologist for the key to inner peace and having him reply, "The chair is over there." The response is a jarring pivot, a non sequitur designed to knock the student's mind off its familiar track. The monk is asking about an internal, psychological state, and the master is pointing to an external, physical object. This moment of disorientation is the doorway to the teaching. On its most practical level, Zhao Zhou's response is a direct and profound instruction for calming a turbulent mind. The source of our suffering is not the world itself, but the endless, churning commentary about the world that happens inside our heads. We are caught in a relentless loop of worry about the future, regret about the past, self-criticism, and fear. This inner churn is the storm. Our mistake is that we try to fight the storm from within the storm itself. We try to use thoughts to control other thoughts, which only creates more turbulence. Zhao Zhou's instruction is radical in its simplicity. Get out of your head. Shift the entire spotlight of your attention from the chaotic inner world to the solid, stable, external world. When you feel yourself being swept away by a storm of anxiety, when your mind is racing with 1,000 worries, find a stone outside. It doesn't have to be a literal rock. It can be any simple, concrete, present moment object. It could be the solid, steady feeling of the chair supporting your body. It could be the unmoving wall across the room from you. It could be the deep, patient grain of the wood on your desk. The practice is to rest your attention there, fully, not as a distraction, but as a point of deep absorption. Explore that stone with your senses. See its color, its texture, its shape. Feel its solidity, its temperature, its simple, profound is-ness. As you become more and more absorbed in the reality of the chair, the wall, the desk, what happens to the inner storm? It naturally begins to subside, not because you fought it, but because you withdrew its fuel. That fuel is your attention. The mind's anxious stories cannot survive without your focused belief in them. By placing your attention on the simple, non-threatening reality of the outside, you ground yourself. You find your anchor. This is not just a psychological trick. It is a deep, spiritual practice. But the teaching goes even deeper. On a second level, Zhao Zhou's statement, "The stone is outside," is designed to collapse the fundamental illusion that there is an inside and an outside in the first place. The monk's entire question is built on a dualistic foundation. There is me and my mind on the inside, and there is the world of stones on the outside. This perceived separation is the root of all alienation and conflict. Zhao Zhou is showing the monk that the stone mind is not a quality you build inside your own head. It is a state you realize by merging your awareness with that which is already stone-like. When you are truly and completely present with the stone, when your awareness has so fully enveloped the stone that the sense of a separate you, who is looking at a stone, begins to dissolve, your mind takes on the very qualities of the stone. Your mind becomes still, solid, silent, and fully present. In that moment of non-dual perception, there is no inside mind and outside stone. There is only stoneness filling the entire field of awareness. Think of it this way. You do not make your mind feel warm by thinking about warmth. You make it feel warm by sitting in the sun, by letting the actual, physical warmth of the sun permeate your being until the distinction between you and the warmth fades. The stone mind is the same. It is not an idea to be achieved. It is a reality to be merged with. This leads to the third layer of the teaching, which concerns the difference between having and being. The monk wanted to have a stone mind. He wanted to possess it as a permanent trait, a badge of his spiritual accomplishment. He wanted to acquire it, put it in his pocket, and carry it around for protection. But the mind is not a thing. It is a process. It is like a river, not a rock. You can never permanently turn it into something it is not. Any attempt to do so will result in failure and frustration. Zhao Zhou's teaching liberates us from this burden. You cannot have a stone mind, but in any given moment, you can be stone-like. You can embody its qualities. The peace and solidity of the stone are always available to you, not as a future goal to be attained, but as a present reality to align yourself with. This removes the pressure to achieve some perfect, static, unchanging state of inner peace. The practice is not about arriving at a final destination of stoneness. The practice is simply about returning, again and again and again, to the solid ground of the present moment, using the real world as your guide and anchor. The path to an unshakable mind, then, is not one of inner construction, but of outer connection. It is not about building a fortress, but about realizing that you are as much of the landscape as the stones and the trees, and that you can draw strength and stability from them by simply paying attention. The world is full of masters, all teaching the silent lesson of the stone. The chair you are sitting on is a master of stability. The ancient tree outside your window is a master of patience. The cup in your hands is a master of simple presence. Your own breath, rising and falling with steady rhythm, is a master of flow. The next time the storm of worry and fear rises inside you, the question to ask is not, how can I fight this feeling? How can I build a wall against this? The question, as taught by Zhao Zhou, is much simpler. It is, the stone is outside. Which stone will I choose to rest my awareness upon right now? In that simple, profound pivot of attention from the imaginary chaos within to the tangible reality, without lies the secret to the peace you have been searching for all along. Toll. Gutei's finger, on our search for meaning, there is a subtle but profound danger that we all face. The danger of the second-hand truth. We are social creatures, wired to learn by imitation. We see something that works for others, and we adopt it. We hear a belief that sounds wise, and we repeat it. On a spiritual path, this tendency can become a significant obstacle. We find a teacher or a tradition we admire, and we begin to mimic the external forms. We adopt the jargon, we wear the clothes, we eat the prescribed diet, we perform the rituals, we learn to quote the masters, to speak eloquently about non-attachment, emptiness, and the nature of mind. We construct a beautiful and convincing identity as a spiritual person. But this identity can become a polished shell, hollow on the inside. We can become so adept at holding up the answers we've learned from others that we fail to do the hard work of discovering the truth for ourselves, in our own bones, through our own direct experience. We mistake the menu for the meal. We end up clinging to a pointer, forgetting completely what it is pointing toward. This critical distinction between imitation and realization lies at the heart of the startling and ferocious koan of Gutei's finger. The master Gutei, who lived in China during the Tang dynasty, had a uniquely simple and direct way of teaching. For any question that was put to him, whether it was a complex philosophical query about the nature of reality or a simple question about the meaning of Zen's response, was always the same. He would not speak. He would simply, silently, raise one finger. That was his entire sermon. That one finger was his complete and total expression of the Dharma. It was not a symbol for oneness or a signal for something else. In that moment, for Gutei, that raised finger was the entire universe, the totality of reality, a direct and wordless transmission of the truth, offered for all to see. Now, Gutei had a young attendant, a boy who served him in the temple. The boy, being observant, saw that this one-finger trick seemed to be the source of the master's wisdom. People would come with their complex problems. The master would raise his finger, and they would leave, often deeply moved or enlightened. The boy, in his youthful naivete, thought he had discovered the secret. He had found the hack. So, he began to imitate it. When visitors would come to the temple and, finding the master busy, would ask the attendant, "What is the core of your master's teaching?" The boy would proudly mimic Gute. He would hold his small hand up and raise his own index finger, feeling a thrill of importance. He had the answer. He could perform the magic trick. News of the boy's second-hand sermons soon reached Gute. The master knew he had to address the situation, not just to stop the boy's foolishness, but for the sake of the boy's own soul. He saw that the boy was clinging to a dead form, a gesture empty of the living truth that powered it. He saw that this imitated finger had become a wall, blocking the boy from any possibility of genuine insight. One day, Gute found the boy and, concealing a sharp knife in his sleeve, asked him directly, "I've heard you have a grasp of the essential teaching. Tell me, what is the meaning of Zen?" The boy, proud to be asked by the master himself, did exactly what he had learned to do. He held up his hand and raised his index finger. As he did, Gute swiftly seized the boy's hand, and with the knife, he cut the finger clean off. The boy cried out, a scream of shock and excruciating pain. He stared in horror at his bleeding hand, his world collapsing. Clutching his maimed hand, he turned and ran, blinded by tears and agony. As he was running away, Gute called out his name, a sharp, commanding cry. The boy, by pure instinct, stopped and turned his head. In that moment, Gute simply raised his own finger, and as the boy looked through his tears, something extraordinary happened. His own finger was gone, his crutch was gone, his imitated, second-hand answer was gone, his spiritual identity was gone. All that was left was pain, emptiness, and the raw, present moment. And in that state of complete and total emptiness, he saw his master's finger, truly saw it for the first time. He saw it not as a trick, not as a concept, not as an answer to be copied, but as a direct pointing to the luminous, ever-present reality that he was of. In that instant, the boy was deeply and profoundly enlightened. This is one of Zen's most ruthless stories, and like the tale of Nansen and the cat, it must be understood as a piece of radical, spiritual theater. Its violence is a metaphor for the kind of terrible compassion that is sometimes required to shatter a student's most cherished illusions. Gute saw that the boy's finger, his conceptual understanding, was a cancer, a dead thing that was preventing any true life from growing. A compassionate master, like a compassionate surgeon, must sometimes cut away the disease to save the patient. Gute took away the boy's false answer to create an empty space where a true realization could be born. The boy's enlightenment was not in spite of losing his finger. It was a direct result of it. The pain and the loss stripped him of everything he thought he knew. It plunged him into the raw, non-conceptual reality of the present moment. And it was only from that place of utter humility and emptiness that he could finally receive the master's real teaching. This koan is a powerful and uncomfortable mirror. It forces us to ask, what is my finger? What second-hand truth? What borrowed belief? What imitated gesture am I holding up as if it were my own? Perhaps your finger is the act of quoting spiritual teachers. You've read all the books. You can speak eloquently about a dozen different traditions. But your daily actions show you treat the cashier at the grocery store. How you react in a traffic jam remain unchanged. The knowledge is a decoration, not a living reality. Perhaps your finger is the ritual itself. You go to your yoga class, or you sit on your meditation cushion. Every single day, you check the box, but you do it mechanically. Your mind, a million miles away. You perform the outer form of the practice, but you miss its inner essence. The ritual has become the goal, rather than a pointer to the goal. Or perhaps your finger is the very identity of being a spiritual person. You use this label to feel special, to subtly place yourself above others. You use spiritual concepts like letting go of the ego as a new and more sophisticated way for your ego to feel superior. Life itself is our gute. It has a way of cutting off our false fingers. A sudden crisis hits a job loss. A health scare and all our pretty, borrowed platitudes about everything happening for a reason turn to ash in our mouths. A deep loss occurs, and our conceptual understanding of non-attachment is revealed to be utterly powerless in the face of real grief. These moments are painful, but they are also moments of terrible grace. They are life's way of showing us where our understanding is merely borrowed. They are invitations to let go of our conceptual maps and to start exploring the territory of our own direct experience. The path to authentic awakening is not about collecting more answers, more techniques, or more beautiful concepts. It is about having the courage to let go of what we think we know. It is about valuing our own humble, direct, moment-to-moment experience, with all its confusion and imperfection more than the most profound-sounding truth borrowed from another. The teachings of the great masters are invaluable pointers, but they are only pointers. A finger pointing at the moon is not the moon itself. The goal is to see the moon. The ultimate aim is not to have no finger, but to discover our own. After his enlightenment, the boy would have found his own unique, authentic way to express the truth he had realized. It might have been through a word, a laugh, or a simple act of kindness. The spiritual journey is a movement from imitation to authenticity. It is about finding your own, living response to the great mystery of this life. So, look at your own hand. Look at the beliefs and practices you hold dear, and ask yourself with unflinching honesty, is this my own lived experience? Is this the moon that I have seen with my own eyes? Or is this just someone else's finger? 13. Good luck. Bad luck. Who knows? Our lives are a story we tell ourselves, and we are constantly editing the manuscript in real time. Every day, every hour, we add new labels, new judgments, new chapter titles. A pleasant email arrives, and we write, "This is a good day." We get stuck in traffic, and we scribble in the margins, "This is a disaster, my whole morning is ruined." A project succeeds, and we call the chapter Triumph. A relationship ends, and we title the failure. We ride this emotional roller coaster, our inner peace, rising and falling with the relentless tide of what we perceive as good and bad fortune. Our happiness becomes a fragile thing, completely conditional on getting more of the good and avoiding the bad. We live like anxious gamblers, sweating over every turn of the card, believing that we can somehow control the outcome if we just worry enough, plan enough, and judge correctly. But this effort is utterly exhausting, and it is based on a fundamental illusion. The illusion that we, from our limited vantage point, actually know what is good and what is bad. There is an ancient Taoist story, deeply cherished in Zen, that gently and profoundly dismantles this illusion. The story is about an old farmer who lived in a remote village on the frontier. He was poor, but he was wise, though his wisdom was not of the kind found in books. It was an earthy, grounded wisdom that came from a lifetime of watching the seasons turn and the clouds pass. The farmer's most prized possession was a beautiful, strong horse. One day, the gate to the corral was left unlatched, and the horse, sensing freedom, ran off into the wilderness and disappeared. Hearing the news, the farmer's neighbors all came to his house to offer their condolences. They shook their heads and clicked their tongues. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said, "to lose your only horse, your most valuable asset. This is truly a misfortune." The farmer listened patiently to their expressions of sympathy, and when they were finished, he simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The neighbors went away, puzzled by his strange detachment. A few weeks later, something incredible happened. The farmer's horse returned, and it was not alone. It had led a whole herd of magnificent wild horses back from the mountains into the farmer's empty corral. Suddenly, the farmer was not just a man with one horse. He was a wealthy man with a dozen. The neighbors, hearing this news, rushed back to his house, their faces beaming with excitement for him. "What amazing luck," they exclaimed. "You lost one horse and gained 12. You are a blessed man. This is a great fortune." The farmer stood calmly amidst their celebration, and when they paused for breath, he simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The neighbors were again bewildered by his lack of excitement. A short time later, the farmer's only son, a strong and capable young man, decided he would try to break one of the wild horses. But the horse was powerful and untamed. It reared up and threw the son to the ground with great force. The young man's leg was badly broken, a severe injury that would leave him unable to walk properly for a very long time. Once again, the sympathetic neighbors gathered. "Oh, what dreadful luck," they cried. "First the great fortune, and now this tragedy. Your only son, crippled. Better to have never seen those horses at all. This is the worst of misfortunes." The farmer, looking at his son resting in pain, simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A few months later, the emperor's army swept through the province. A brutal war had broken out on the frontier, and they were conscripting every single able-bodied young man for the fight. The soldiers came to the village and took away all the neighbors' sons. It was a time of great weeping and sorrow, for everyone knew that most of the young men sent to this icular war would never return. But when the soldiers came to the old farmer's house and saw his son with his badly broken leg, they passed him by. He was spared. This story is a masterclass in equanimity. The farmer is a sage, and his wisdom lies in his radical refusal to attach to any single outcome. His peace is not dependent on circumstances because he understands three profound truths that we constantly forget. First, he understands the utter limits of human judgment. We see life as a series of disconnected snapshots. The horse is gone snapshot. Bad. The horse is return snapshot. Good. The leg is broken snapshot. Bad. The army passes by snapshot. Good. But life is not a series of snapshots. It is a vast, flowing, interconnected river. Each event is woven into an infinitely complex tapestry of cause and effect that stretches far beyond our sight. To label any single event as good or bad is like looking at a single pixel on a screen and trying to judge the entire movie. It is an act of profound arrogance. The farmer's refrain, "Who knows?" is a statement of deep humility. It is an acknowledgement that his perspective is limited and that the ultimate nature of an event can only be revealed in time, if ever. Second, the farmer is free from the tyranny of emotional reactivity. Because he does not cling to the good luck, he is not devastated by the bad luck. His inner state is like a deep ocean, while the events of his life are like the waves on the surface. For his neighbors, their inner state is the waves. They are thrown into elation by good news and plunged into despair by bad news. Their happiness is a commodity, bought and sold by the events of the day. The farmer's peace is unconditional. It is not for sale. This is the practical, lived reality of the stone mind and the empty boat. His boat is not weighed down by the cargo of expectation, so he is not capsized by the waves of fortune. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the farmer embraces the wisdom of uncertainty. Our modern minds crave certainty. We make 5-year plans. We check the weather forecast obsessively. We try to control every variable of our lives. Anxiety is the natural result of this desire to know and control a fundamentally unknowable and uncontrollable future. The farmer's mantra, "Who knows?" is the perfect antidote to anxiety. It is not a statement of cynical ignorance, but one of intelligent surrender. It is a conscious relaxation into the mystery. It is a statement of trust in the unfolding process of life, even when it is painful or incomprehensible. It opens up a space of calm curiosity, rather than one of clenched fear or desperate hope. We can learn to be the farmer in our own lives. The practice begins by noticing our own habit of instant judgment. The next time you feel that jolt of, "This is great," or "This is terrible," try to gently insert the farmer's wisdom. Think of an event from your recent past that you labeled bad. Perhaps you made a mistake at work or had an argument with a friend. Can you hold that event in your mind and with genuine curiosity ask, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" Perhaps the mistake at work will lead to a conversation that clarifies your role in a needed way. Perhaps the argument will open the door to a deeper level of honesty in your friendship. You don't know. The story is not finished yet. Now, think of something from your deeper past that you have always carried as a disaster, a career path that ended, a relationship that failed, a dream that died. Can you dare to trace the threads forward from that event? Did that failure force you onto a new path that ultimately brought you unexpected gifts? Did it teach you a lesson in resilience or compassion that you would not have learned otherwise? Can you look back at that great misfortune of your life and honestly say, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" This is not a practice of pretending that painful things are not painful. The farmer surely felt sorrow when his son was injured. The practice is about not adding a second layer, a layer of story and judgment on top of the raw experience. Pain is inevitable. Suffering from our story about the pain is optional. The farmer's wisdom teaches us that true peace is found not in manipulating our lives to have only good outcomes, but in cultivating a mind that is at peace with all outcomes. It is about planting our seeds, tending our soil, and meeting both the sunshine and the storm with a calm, steady, and open heart. It is about learning to trust the great, unfolding river of life, and to find a profound and unshakable rest in the simple, humble, and deeply liberating wisdom of who knows. 14. The wild fox and the law of life. As we walk a spiritual path, a subtle and seductive desire can take root in the mind. It is the desire for exemption. We begin to believe that the goal of enlightenment is to rise above the messy, complicated laws of life. We seek a kind of divine immunity, a special status where we are no longer subject to cause and effect, no longer vulnerable to pain, and no longer responsible for the consequences of our actions. We want to believe that awakening is a get-out-of-jail-free card. From the human condition, this desire to be special, to be separate from, and superior to the ordinary flow of life, is one of the most profound traps for the ego. And there is no story in Zen that exposes this trap with more penetrating insight than the great koan of the wild fox. The story begins at the monastery of the great master Hyakujo. Every single time, Hyakujo would give a Dharma talk to his assembly of monks. A mysterious old man would be present. He would sit at the back of the hall, listening intently, but he never seemed to interact with the other monks. He was a silent, spectral presence. This went on for a very long time. Then one day, after the lecture had ended and all the monks had deed, the old man stayed behind. Hyakujo, sensing something unusual, approached him. The old man turned, his face etched with a sorrow that seemed ancient. "I am not what I appear to be," he confessed to the master. "I am not truly a human being. I am the spirit of a wild fox." He then proceeded to tell his story. Ages and ages ago, during the time of a Buddha from a past eon, he himself had been the head monk, the master of this very monastery. One day, a student had asked him a question of deep significance. Does an enlightened person, a person of great practice, still fall under the law of cause and effect? The law of cause and effect, what we might call karma, the fundamental operating system of the universe. If you plant a seed of kindness, you will reap a harvest of kindness. If you act out of anger, you will receive anger in return. If you drop a stone, it will fall. The old monk, in his position as master, puffed up with spiritual pride and a desire to portray enlightenment as a state of supreme, untouchable power, gave a fateful answer. He replied, "Number. An enlightened person does not fall under the law of cause and effect." Because of this one single, arrogant, and deeply wrong answer, he was immediately condemned. His wrong view transformed his very being, and for 500 consecutive lifetimes, he had been reborn as a wild fox, living a life of instinct, fear, and suffering in the mountains behind the monastery. For 500 lifetimes, he had been paying the price for that one moment of spiritual ego. He then bowed low before Hyakujo and begged him, with desperate sincerity, "I implore you, Master, please give me the turning word, the correct insight that will release me from this fox body." Hyakujo looked at him with great compassion. "Ask me the same question," he said. The old foxman gathered himself and asked, his voice trembling with the weight of centuries, "Does an enlightened person fall under the law of cause and effect?" Hyakujo replied, his voice clear and resonant. "An enlightened person is not blind to cause and effect." Upon hearing these words, the old man was instantly and profoundly enlightened. The chains of his 500 lifetimes of suffering shattered. He bowed in deep gratitude. "I am now free," he said. "I ask one last favor. When I die, please bury my body on the mountain with the proper ceremony for a deceased monk." The next day, Hyakujo went to the mountain behind the monastery, and there, as promised, he found the body of a dead fox. He compassionately gave it the full funeral rites of a respected monk. This koan is a deep and multi-layered teaching. To understand its power, we must first dissect the two answers. The original answer, "An enlightened person does not fall under the law," is the answer of the spiritual ego. It is a statement of separation. It creates a duality, placing the enlightened person over here in a special protected bubble, and the law of cause and effect over there as something that only applies to ordinary, unenlightened beings. It is a denial of reality. To say one does not fall under the law of causality is as absurd as saying one does not fall under the law of gravity. It is an attempt to use the concept of enlightenment to escape from life, rather than to engage with it more fully. This desire for exemption, this denial, is what turned the man into a foxan animal driven purely by the raw, instinctual laws of nature. A direct and ironic karmic lesson. Now, consider Hyakujo's liberating answer. An enlightened person is not blind to cause and effect. The difference is subtle, yet absolute. This is not about exemption. It is about clarity. The enlightened person does not ignore the law of cause and effect. They see it with perfect, diamond-like precision. They see the intricate, interwoven web of causality that connects every single thought, word, and action to its future consequence. They see how a moment of anger plants a seed of future suffering, how an act of generosity plants a seed of future joy. Because of this profound clarity, they are truly free. Their freedom is not the freedom to be reckless, without consequence. It is the freedom from the very ignorance, greed, and hatred that create negative consequences in the first place. A person who is not blind to fire does not foolishly stick their hand in the flame. Their clear seeing makes them free from the compulsion to harm themselves and others. They are not a fugitive from the law. They are a master of the law. They don't stand from the river of causality. They have become one with its flow, able to navigate it with supreme wisdom and grace. This koan asks us to look for the wild fox inside ourselves. In what ways are we trying to live as if we are exempt? This is the core of what is often called spiritual bypassing. We use spiritual sounding concepts to avoid dealing with our real human lives. We might say, it's all an illusion anyway, as a way to avoid feeling the real pain of a broken heart. We might claim, I'm just going with the flow, as a justification for being irresponsible or hurting others. We might say, everything is perfect as it is, as a way to remain passive in the face of injustice. Each of these is a form of the old monk's answer. Each is an attempt to use a concept to place ourselves above the consequences and responsibilities of our own lives. We all carry the karmic weight of our own 500 lifetimes, the ingrained habits, the conditioned reactions, the deep-seated regrets that shape our present experience. We often feel trapped by this history, believing that our past defines us. But this koan offers a profound hope. The foxman was not freed by changing his past. He could not undo the wrong answer he gave centuries ago. He was freed in a single instant by changing his view in the present. A single moment of clear seeing, of true understanding, has the power to liberate us from a lifetime of being haunted by a wrong view. The turning word for us is the shift from a mindset of victimization to one of responsibility. It's the shift from asking, why is this happening to me? Which places us as a victim, separate from the laws of life, to asking, what is this situation showing me? What seeds have I planted? And what seeds do I wish to plant now with my response? This moves us from a position of passive suffering to one of active, conscious participation in our own lives. True spiritual freedom is not a magical escape hatch from reality. It is the profound and dignified peace that comes from understanding the laws of reality so intimately that you no longer create suffering for yourself or others. It is accepting that your choices have weight, that your actions have consequences, and seeing this not as a burden, but as a gift. It is the gift of a meaningful life, where what you do matters. The ultimate liberation is not freedom from consequences, but the freedom that comes from no longer being blind. 15. Wash your bowl. In our complex lives, we are experts at commentalization. We draw sharp, imaginary lines, dividing our existence into separate zones. There is work time, a period of stress and focus. There is family time, with its own distinct joys and obligations. There is leisure time, where we seek escape and entertainment. And for those of us on a spiritual journey, we create another, very special box, practice time. This is the sacred container, the 20 minutes on the meditation cushion, the hour in the yoga studio, the weekend retreat that we designate as our real spiritual work. We come to believe that this container is where the magic happens, where transformation occurs. The rest of our life, washing the dishes, driving through traffic, answering emails, paying the bills, we see as a mundane and often frustrating prelude. It's the stuff we have to get through in order to arrive at the important, the sacred, the where we finally get to work on ourselves. We are constantly waiting for the real teaching to begin. This deep-seated misunderstanding of where to find the sacred is precisely what one of Zen's most famous and profound stories seeks to remedy. The story concerns a monk who had traveled a great distance to study with the legendary master Zhao, whom we know as Joshu. Imagine the journey he undertook. Weeks or months on dusty roads, his mind filled with a single, burning purpose: to reach the presence of a truly enlightened being. He has left his old life behind. He has endured hardship. He arrives at the monastery, his heart full of a mixture of reverence, hope, and sincere aspiration. He is finally here. He is ready to begin. He finds the master and, bowing, makes his earnest plea. "I have just entered the monastery," he says, his voice full of humility. "I am new and ignorant. Please, Master, teach me. Show me the way." He is an empty vessel, ready to be filled with the most profound secrets of the universe. He is asking for the great teaching, the esoteric key, the starting point of the path to enlightenment. Joshu looked at the monk, this sincere seeker standing before him, brimming with expectation. The master did not launch into a discourse on the Four Noble Truths. He did not explain the intricacies of meditation. He did not offer a complex koan to ponder. Instead, he asked a simple, mundane question. "Have you eaten your rice porridge?" The question is a classic Zen pattern interrupt. It's disarmingly ordinary. The monk wants to talk about nirvana, and Joshu is talking about breakfast. The question immediately pulls the monk's attention away from his grand, abstract quest for future enlightenment and grounds him squarely in the concrete, lived reality of the last hour. It was a direct inquiry into his own personal, present-moment experience. The monk, perhaps a little confused but being honest, replied, "Yes, Master, I have eaten." Joshu nodded. And then, he delivered the great teaching the monk had traveled so far to hear. Then, Joshu said, "You had better wash your bowl." And the story concludes with one stunning sentence. At this, the monk was enlightened. How can this be? How can such a simple, practical instruction trigger a profound awakening? Because in that one sentence, Joshu shattered the monk's most fundamental illusion, the belief that the teaching was something other, something separate from his own life, something the master would give him. In that moment, the monk understood everything. Let's unpack the layers of this profound exchange. First, Joshu's instruction, "Wash your bowl," points to the truth that there is nothing lacking. The monk arrived feeling that he was incomplete, that he needed something from the outsider, special knowledge from the master, to be whole. Joshu's questions first established the reality of the monk's experience. You were hungry. You ate your porridge. Now, you are no longer hungry. Life provided the experience and the nourishment. The natural cycle is already complete. You don't need anything extra from me. The teaching was in the eating. The practice is in what comes next. Second, the instruction reveals that the path of Zen is found in simply doing the next indicated thing. We complicate our lives endlessly because our minds are always 10 steps ahead. While we are washing the dishes, we are already thinking about the email we have to write. And while we're writing the email, we're worrying about the dinner we have to cook. We are never fully where we are. Joshu's teaching cuts through this mental chaos like a sword. What is the next, simple, logical step after you have finished eating from a bowl? You wash it. That's it. The path is not a grand, mysterious journey to a faraway place. The path is simply this footstep, and then the next footstep. It is finishing this task, and then beginning the next. Enlightenment is not found in a distant, future state of perfection. It is found in the seamless, unconflicted, wholehearted flow of one simple action after another. Third, and perhaps most importantly, this teaching dissolves the imaginary wall between spiritual life and ordinary life. For the monk, his spiritual life was supposed to begin with the master's special instruction. Everything before that, the journey, the eating, was just mundane preparation. Joshu's statement collapses this distinction entirely. Washing your bowl is not a chore you do so that you can get to your meditation. Washing your bowl, when done with your whole being, is your meditation. Replying to an email, when done with full presence and clarity, is your practice. Listening to your child's story, with your complete and undivided attention, is an act of profound spiritual engagement. Zen is not of your life, it is your whole life, lived with awareness. Finally, the instruction points to the inescapable nature of personal responsibility. Joshu did not say, "Let me wash your bowl for you," or "The bowls will be washed by the universe." He said, "You had better wash your bowl. The master can point the way, but you must walk the path. You must do your own work. No one can live your life for you, digest your food for you, or clean up your messes for you, both literal and metaphorical." The path of awakening is a deeply personal practice of taking full responsibility for the reality of your life, moment by moment. The monk's enlightenment came from the sudden, shocking realization of all this. The grand search was over. The treasure he had been seeking was not in the master's head, but in his own two hands. The sacred was not in a future, imagined moment, but right here, in this dirty bowl. The burden of seeking something special and elsewhere fell from his shoulders, and in its place was the simple, liberating, and profound reality of his own life. This teaching is a direct invitation to us. What is the dirty bowl in your own life right now? What simple, necessary task are you avoiding or rushing through because you deem it unimportant, unspiritual, or just plain boring? It could be the pile of bills on your desk. It could be the difficult conversation you've been putting off. It could be the cluttered garage or the apology you know you need to make. These are your bowls. The practice is to choose one, and for a set period of time, just do that one thing. As you do it, bring your entire being to it. If you are washing a dish, devote yourself to the act of washing. Feel the sensation of the warm water on your skin. See the rainbow colors in the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the plate against the porcelain sink. When your mind inevitably wanders, gently and without judgment, guide it back to the task at hand. Just wash the bowl. In this simple, wholehearted engagement, you will find the peace and presence you were seeking elsewhere. Joshu's teaching empowers us to stop looking outside ourselves for the answer. The path is not hidden. The teaching is not secret. It is written in the simple, unvarnished grammar of our daily existence. After you have eaten, you wash your bowl. After you have slept, you make your bed. After you have finished your work, you rest. This is it. And in this simple, profound, and ever-present reality, you will find everything you have ever been looking for. 16. Every day is a good day. We live our lives in a constant state of negotiation with reality. Our inner peace often feels like a fragile truce, dependent on a specific set of favorable conditions. We have a deeply ingrained idea of what a good day should look like. Things go our way, the sun is shining, our mood is light and productive, people are kind. A bad day is the opposite. Unexpected problems arise, the weather is gloomy, we feel anxious or sad, people are difficult. We then spend most of our energy trying to engineer more of the good days and avoid the bad ones. Our spiritual practice can, if we are not careful, become just another tool in this project. We meditate, hoping to feel calm. We do yoga, hoping to feel blissful. And when a day arrives filled with difficult emotions, grief, anger, frustration, boredom, we think our practice has failed. We think, I can't practice today. I feel too terrible. We believe that these bad days are obstacles to our path, interruptions to our spiritual progress. We are waiting for the inner weather to clear so that we can get back to the real work. But what if this entire framework is wrong? What if the storm is not an obstacle to the path, but the path itself? This is the radical insight offered in one of Zen's most potent declarations. The master Yunmen, a teacher known for his sharp, concise, and often paradoxical statements, once stood before his assembly of monks. He posed a question, cloaked in classic Zen language. I don't ask you about before the 15th of the month, he said. But what about after the 15th? Come, say a word about it. To understand the question, we have to know that in the lunar calendar, the 15th of the month is the day of the full moon. In Zen, the full moon is a powerful symbol for a moment of enlightenment, a peak experience, a profound insight where everything is seen with perfect clarity. So, Yunmen was asking something incredibly practical. He was saying, I'm not interested in hearing about your spiritual highs. I don't want to know about your blissful meditation state or your great, earth-shattering realization on the retreat. I want to know what happens the day after, when the retreat is over, when the bliss fades, when you are back to your ordinary life with its chores and its difficulties. What then? How do you live after the peak experience? Say a word about that. A deep silence fell over the hall. The monks were stumped. How do you put words to the simple, often messy, reality of daily life after the great insight? Seeing that no one could answer, Yunmen answered for them. He declared, simply and with absolute authority, Nichi Nichi Kore Konichi. Every day is a good day. This statement is easily misunderstood. To a modern ear, it can sound like a form of toxic positivity, an instruction to put on a happy face and pretend that days of pain, injustice, loss, and profound sorrow are somehow pleasant. This is the furthest thing from the truth. Yunmen was not a sentimentalist. He was a master who understood the full spectrum of human suffering. To understand this teaching, we must ask the question, a good day for what? The answer is, a good day for practice, a good day for being alive. A day filled with joy and sunshine is a good day. It is a good day to practice experiencing joy without clinging to it. A day filled with intense frustration and difficulty is also a good day. It is a perfect, tailor-made day to practice patience and to observe the workings of the agitated mind. A day overwhelmed by grief is also a good day. It is a complete and sacred opportunity to practice being with sorrow with a tender and open heart. A day of boring, monotonous routine is also a good day. It is a perfect day to practice finding the sacred in the mundane. As we learned from Joshu's bowl, no day is an obstacle. No day is a waste of time. Every single day, with its unique texture of joys and sorrows, is the curriculum. Every day is the path. The suffering comes not from the experience of sadness, but from the thought, I shouldn't be feeling this. The struggle comes not from the heat of a summer afternoon, but from the incessant mental complaint, I wish it were cooler. The war is not with the day, it is with our idea of how the day should be. Yunmen's declaration is a call to lay down our arms in this internal war. It is an invitation to practice radical acceptance of reality as it is. A good day, in this sense, is a day that we can meet fully, without resistance. It is a day where we can allow the internal and external weather to be exactly what it is, without needing to fix it, change it, or judge it. The goodness is not in the content of the day's events, but in the quality of our presence and acceptance. How then do we practice living this way? We can start by shifting our intention. When you wake up in the morning, instead of hoping for an easy or pleasant day, you can set a simple, powerful intention. Today, I will meet whatever arises with awareness. My goal is not to feel good, but to be present. This small shift can change everything. When the inevitable bad weather of a difficult emotion aggravates a wave of anxiety, a fog of depression, our instinct is to fight it or distract ourselves from it. The practice of every day is a good day suggests a different approach. First, you acknowledge and name the weather. This is sadness visiting me. This is the feeling of anger. By naming it, you create a little space. You see that you are not the sadness. You are the one who is aware of the sadness. Second, you allow yourself to feel the raw, physical sensations of the emotion in your body. Where does it live? Is it a tightness in your chest? A knot in your stomach? A heat in your face? Instead of pushing it away, can you, just for a few moments, be curious about its physical texture? This grounds the experience in the body and out of the looping stories of the mind. Finally, you can whisper the koan to yourself as a form of deep self-compassion. As you feel the ache of sorrow, you can say, this is a day of sorrow. This is a good day. You are not celebrating the sorrow. You are validating your own experience. You are affirming that even this pain, this difficulty, is a valid and workable of your human life. Of the path. You stop fighting with reality. This teaching also applies to the good weather trap. When we feel happy, peaceful, and full of joy, our tendency is to grasp and cling, terrified that the feeling will end. This clinging plants the seeds of future suffering. The practice on a joyous day is to inhabit the joy fully, to savor it, but to do so with a light touch, understanding that this, too, is weather. Enjoy the sunshine without trying to bottle it. Every day is a good day, is the lived embodiment of the farmer's wisdom. It is how one lives when one has stopped judging events as good luck or bad luck. It is the unconditional peace that allows you to wash your bowl, regardless of your mood. It is the mindset of the person who is not blind to cause and effect, because they see that resisting reality is the primary cause of suffering. True freedom is not found by engineering a life free of problems, but by cultivating a mind and heart that can offer an unconditional welcome to all of life, with all its seasons. It is about developing a capacity for presence so spacious and so loving that it can hold the brilliant joy of a sunrise and the deep grief of a midnight storm with the same steady, unwavering kindness. It is the profound and simple realization that any day you are alive with its full, unique, and unrepeatable texture of experiences, by its very nature, a good day. It is a good day to be here. 17. The girl on the muddy road. We are all travelers on a long road, and as we walk, we accumulate baggage. I don't mean the physical baggage we carry in our hands, but the far heavier baggage we carry in our minds. Think about the weight of it. There's the argument you had with your ner yesterday, which you continue to relitigate in your head, trying to find the perfect comeback you should have used. There's the embarrassing mistake you made at work last week, a memory that still makes you cringe with shame. There's the insult a family member threw at you 10 years ago, a wound you keep poking to make sure it's still tender. We carry these ghosts with us. We allow events that are long over, moments that exist only as faint electrical impulses in our brain, to dictate our present moment reality. Our minds become cluttered, haunted houses, filled with the resentments, regrets, and worries of the past. We believe we are walking forward, but in reality, we are stuck on a muddy road miles back, carrying burdens we don't even realize we've picked up. This profound human habit of clinging to what is already gone is the subject of a beautiful and deceptively simple Zen story. The story tells of two monks, an elder named Tanzan and a younger one named Ekido, who were journeying together. They were walking along a country road that had turned into a sea of mud after a heavy spring rain. As they rounded a bend, they came across a young woman, exquisitely dressed in a silk kimono and finery, standing helplessly at the edge of a large, impassable puddle. She was clearly distressed, unable to cross without ruining her beautiful clothes. The two monks paused. Now, monks in this tradition followed very strict precepts, one of which was a prohibition against touching or even making prolonged eye contact with women, especially young and lovely ones. The rule was there to guard against temptation and to maintain the purity of their monastic vows. Ekido, the younger monk, was a stern and diligent follower of the rules. He saw the woman. His mind immediately consulted the rulebook, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He averted his gaze, tightened his grip on his own piety, and walked carefully around the puddle, leaving the woman to her fate. He had successfully avoided contamination. He had upheld the precept. Tanzan, the older monk, saw the situation differently. He did not see a woman, a temptation, or a potential violation of the rules. He saw a human being who was stuck. Without a word of hesitation, and with a warm smile, he walked directly up to the young woman. He lifted her up in his arms, carried her straight across the deep, muddy patch, and gently set her down on the dry ground on the other side. He then bowed slightly and, without a backward glance, continued on his journey. Ekido, watching this in stunned silence, quickly caught up, his face a mask of disapproval. The two monks walked on and on. For hours, they walked in complete silence. The landscape passed by them fields, forests, and streams. The sun began to set, but while Tanzan's mind was as clear and open as the evening sky, Ekido's mind was a raging storm. He was seething. He replayed the scene at the muddy road again and again. How could Tanzan do that? He is an elder. He should know better. He broke a sacred precept. He held a woman in his arms. It's a disgrace. What would people think if they saw? What does this say about his practice? Every step Ekido took, he was not on the road to the temple. He was back at the puddle, his mind filled with judgment, indignation, and righteous anger. Finally, as they neared the lodging temple for the night, Ekido could bear the weight of his mental burden no longer. The pressure inside him burst forth. He turned to Tanzan and sputtered, "We monks are not supposed to go near women. It is forbidden, especially young and lovely ones. It is dangerous to our practice. Why did you do that back there?" Tanzan stopped walking. He looked at his younger brother, monk, with a calm, compassionate expression. He listened to the outburst, and after a moment of silence, he replied, his voice gentle but his words like a thunderclap. "I left the girl there, on the side of the road, hours ago," he said. "Are you still carrying her?" This story is a profound teaching on the nature of true purity, true freedom, and the baggage we choose to carry. Aikido, the one who followed the rule to the letter, who never laid a hand on the woman, was the one who was completely defiled. He was drowning in the mud of his own mind. The real mud, the story shows us, is not the dirt on the road. The real mud is our attachments, our judgments, our rigid thinking, and our lingering resentments. Tanzen, who walked right into the physical mud, who performed the forbidden act, remained completely stainless, because his heart was pure and his mind was free. The story brilliantly contrasts two different approaches to a spiritual life. Aikido represents the path of conceptual morality. His goodness is defined by a set of external rules and prohibitions. He is good because of what he doesn't do. His practice is based on avoidance and separation. The rules, for him, have become more important than the reality of a human being in need. He is clinging to the training wheels of the precepts, afraid to actually ride the bicycle of life. Tanzen represents the path of spontaneous right action. His morality flows from a place of deep presence and compassion. He is not guided by a pre-written script, but by the direct needs of the present moment. He saw a problem, and, without internal conflict, he provided the solution. His action was not a violation of the spirit of the precepts. It was the ultimate fulfillment of it. The precepts exist for one reason: to guide us toward a life that does not cause harm and that alleviates suffering. Tanzen, by alleviating the woman's suffering, was embodying the very heart of the teachings, while Aikido, by clinging to the letter of the law, had missed its heart entirely. But the most powerful lesson is in Tanzen's final question: are you still carrying her? It is a mirror held up to Aikido, and to all of us. Tanzen's interaction with the woman lasted perhaps 30 seconds. He engaged with the situation fully, held her completely, and then let her go. Completely. He was free. Aikido, on the other hand, never touched her, yet he had been mentally carrying her, tormenting himself with the idea of her, for hours. He was the one who was truly and deeply entangled. He was weighed down not by a person, but by his own thoughts. This koan invites us to conduct a searching inventory of our own minds. What are you still carrying? What old injustices? What past slights? What bygone arguments are you still hauling down the road of your life? Is it the job you lost 5 years ago? Is it the unkind comment a friend made last month? Is it a mistake you made in your youth that you still punish yourself for? We think these things are in the past, but if we are still replaying them, still feeling the anger or shame from them, then we are still carrying them. We are Aikido, stuck in the mud, while life has moved on down the road. The practice this story teaches is the art of putting it down. It is a conscious act of letting go. When you notice your mind has wandered back to an old grievance, the first step is to simply acknowledge it without judgment. Ah, there it is. I am carrying that argument again. The next step is a gentle but firm act of mental release. You can visualize yourself placing the burden down on the side of the road, wishing it well, and turning your attention back to what is right here, right now. The feeling of your breath, the sensation of your feet on the floor, the sound of the world around you. This is not about denying the past or suppressing memories. It is about refusing to allow the ghosts of yesterday to possess the living reality of today. True spiritual freedom is not about walking a perfectly clean path where you are never challenged. It is about developing the ability to walk through the inevitable mud of life without letting it stick to you. It is the freedom of non-attachment in action. It is the profound peace that comes from learning how to deal with each moment, fully and completely, and then to let it go, fully and completely. It is the art of traveling light. So, take a moment. Look inside. What old burdens are weighing you down? Are you ready to put them down? Are you ready to leave the girl by the side of the road and walk on, free? 18. I won't say. Of all the questions that haunt the human mind, one stands alone in its power to command our fear and shape our lives. The question of death. It is the great unthinkable, the final mystery. Our entire civilization, in many ways, is a magnificent and elaborate defense against this one simple fact. We build legacies, we chase fame, we accumulate wealth, we create art in a desperate attempt to carve something permanent out of the fleeting nature of existence. We want to leave a mark, to create a story that will outlast our bodies. We are terrified of annihilation, of the idea that this precious, vivid sense of I could simply vanish. This deep, existential anxiety about what happens when our story ends is the backdrop for one of Zen's most profound and challenging teachings. The story involves a master named Dogo and his earnest student, Zengen. One day, the two of them went to a nearby house to pay their respects to a family whose member had just died. They entered the quiet, somber room where the body lay in a coffin. The air was thick with grief and the palpable presence of mortality. For Zengen, this was not just a social call. It was a moment of profound spiritual inquiry. Believing that in the raw presence of death, the ultimate truth could be revealed, he approached the coffin. He rapped his knuckles lightly on the wooden lidar, sharp, questioning sound in the silent room. He then turned to his master and asked the question that lay at the heart of his own deepest fear. Looking at this, he said, gesturing to the coffin, is the person inside alive, or are they dead? This is the ultimate binary choice. It is the question the rational mind demands an answer to. Everything in our experience is either one or the other. A thing is either here or not here, on or off, alive or dead. Zengen wanted clarity. He wanted a definitive truth from his master that would help him make sense of the great mystery before him. Dogo looked at his student, then at the coffin, and then back at his student. His reply was calm, quiet, and utterly confounding. I won't say alive, he said, and I won't say dead. Zengen was stunned into silence. This was not an answer. It was a refusal to answer. He felt that his master was withholding the most crucial teaching of all. His frustration began to build. Why? He pressed. Why won't you say? Dogo simply repeated, his voice unwavering. I won't say. The two left the house of mourning and began the long walk back to the monastery. Zengen walked behind his master, his mind in a state of turmoil. The master possessed the answer, the key to the greatest of all fears, and he was refusing to share it. Zengen's frustration grew into anger and desperation. He felt he could not take another step without this knowledge. Finally, he stopped and declared, Master, if you do not answer my question right now, I will hit you. Dogo stopped and turned to face him. There was no fear or anger in his eyes, only a deep, sad compassion. Go ahead and hit me, he said softly, but I will never say. To do so would be to betray you. This moment is breathtaking. Dogo was willing to endure a physical blow from his own student rather than give him the answer he was demanding. Why? Because he knew that any answer he could provide in words would be a lie, a conceptual trap that would ultimately cause his student more harm than good. His not saying was not an act of withholding. It was an act of supreme compassion and skillful teaching. Let's unpack this. If Dogo had said, he is dead, Zengen's mind might have grasped onto the idea of nihilism, the belief that life has no meaning and ends in absolute nothingness. This view can lead to despair or recklessness. If Dogo had said, "He is alive," in some other form, Zengen's mind might have grasped onto the idea of eternalism, the belief in a permanent, unchanging soul that simply moves from one form to another. This view can lead to complacency and a lack of urgency in one's practice. Both alive and dead are just concepts, two sides of the same dualistic coin. Dogo's refusal to choose a side was a direct pointing to a reality that transcends this pair of opposites. He was pointing to the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self. Zengen's question, "Is he alive or dead?" is flawed from the very beginning because it contains a faulty premise that there is a solid, separate, continuous entitia, he, that can be either alive or dead. Zen teaches that what we call a person is not a noun, but a verb. It is a process. It is a temporary coming together of various elements, of physical form, of feelings, of perceptions, of thoughts, of consciousness. These elements are in a constant state of flux, changing from moment to moment. There is no permanent, unchanging CEO in the head, no static soul that owns these experiences. There is only the process itself. Think of a wave on the ocean. You can point to it and say, "There is a wave," but what is it, really? Is it a separate thing? Or is it just a temporary form that the ocean is taking? When the wave crests and crashes on the shore, does it die? Or does its energy simply return to the ocean from which it was never, for a moment, separate? The wave was always just water. Dogo was pointing at the ocean, while Zengen was demanding to know the fate of a single wave. By refusing to answer, Dogo was trying to get Zengen to stop focusing on the transient form of the wave and to realize the boundless, ever-present nature of the ocean itself. Our true nature, he was pointing, is like the ocean. It is neither born nor does it die. It is the vast, silent awareness in which the entire drama of our individual wave, our life and death appears and disappears. Zengen, still in torment, eventually left Dogo and sought out another master, Sekiso. He recounted the entire story, hoping this new master would finally give him the answer. But after hearing it all, Sekiso simply said, "Dogo was utterly compassionate, and I too won't say." At that moment, hearing the same refusal, Zengen finally understood. The answer was not a secret to be passed from one person to another. The answer was in the not saying. He realized that the truth he was seeking could not be contained in any word or concept. It had to be experienced directly. In letting go of his desperate demand for an answer, the truth itself was revealed to him. This koan asks us to look at the deaths we experience in our own lives. The end of a job, the end of a relationship, the end of a cherished dream, the end of a version of ourselves we used to be. We cling to the alive, and we fear and resist the dead. The practice is to see this as a natural, flowing process. Is the mighty oak tree dead inside the tiny acorn? Is the beautiful butterfly dead inside the chrysalis? Or is it all one continuous, mysterious transformation? When we experience pain or sorrow, our mind creates a story of a solid self who is suffering. I am in pain. I am grieving. This, I, feels solid, victimized, and trapped. The practice this koan points to is to gently investigate this I. Who is it that is feeling this? Can you find a permanent, unchanging owner of the pain? Or is there simply the experience of pain arising and passing in this open field of awareness. By loosening our grip on the solid I, the suffering becomes less personal, less concentrated, less solid. It becomes more like a weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our true nature. Dogo's "I won't say" is a profound act of trust. He is telling his student, "I trust you to find this out for yourself. I will not insult your intelligence or your potential by giving you a cheap, second-hand concept. You have the capacity to see the living truth directly." This is the ultimate teaching. It is an empowerment. It is a call to abandon our search for answers from the outside and to begin the courageous inner work of direct looking. It is the invitation to become comfortable with mystery, to rest in the great not knowing, and to discover a peace that is not dependent on having all the answers. It is the discovery that our true nature is the silent, unshakable awareness that needs no answer, because it is the space in which all questions arise and dissolve. 19. Not the wind, not the flag. We live our lives in a state of constant reaction to the world around us. We believe, on a fundamental level, that our inner state of peace is at the mercy of external events. Our sense of well-being is a fragile vessel, tossed about on the unpredictable ocean of our circumstances. The stock market plunges, and we feel a wave of anxiety. A car cuts us off in traffic, and we feel a hot surge of anger. The news cycle delivers its daily dose of tragedy and conflict, and we feel a sense of despair. Our neighbor's dog barks incessantly, and we feel our irritation rising until we can't think straight. In each of these moments, our logic is simple and direct. The problem is out there. Our suffering is caused by the stock market, the other driver, the news, the dog. We think, if only that external thing would stop, then I could be at peace. Our entire life becomes a project of trying to control the uncontrollable, of trying to calm the winds and still the flags of the world, believing that this is the only path to tranquility. This profound misunderstanding of the true source of our disturbance is the subject of a short, powerful, and revolutionary Zen story. The story takes place in a monastery courtyard in ancient China. Two monks are standing, looking up at a tall flagpole, from which a banner is flapping and snapping in a strong breeze. The two monks, being earnest students of reality, begin a debate about the nature of what they are seeing. The first monk, a man who trusts the direct evidence of his senses, says, "Look how that flag moves. The flag is clearly the thing that is moving." The second monk, perhaps a more sophisticated thinker who understands something of causality, shakes his head in disagreement. "You are mistaken," he says. "The flag is an inanimate object. It cannot move on its own. It is the wind that is moving, and its force is what causes the flag to move." They go back and forth, trapped in their argument. The flag is moving. No, the wind is moving. Each is certain of his own position, certain that he has correctly identified the source of the motion. As they are arguing, the great sixth patriarch of Zen, Huineng, happens to be passing by. He is a towering figure in Zen history, a man renowned for his deep, intuitive understanding. He overhears their debate, and seeing that both are caught in a conceptual trap, he stops and offers them a third perspective. "Venerable brothers," he says, his voice cutting through their argument, "it is not the wind that moves. It is not the flag that moves. It is your mind that moves." This statement is one of the most pivotal and clarifying in all of Zen. It is a radical reframing of our entire experience of reality. To understand its depth, we must be clear about what Huineng is not saying. He is not a solipsist. He is not denying the existence of an objective, physical world. He is not claiming that the wind and the flag are mere illusions, and that only the mind is real. The wind is, in fact, blowing. The flag is, in fact, flapping. What Huineng is pointing to is the source of their disturbance, the source of the problem, the source of the argument. That source is not in the external world, but entirely within the activity of their own minds. What does it mean to say, it is your mind that moves? Firstly, the mind moves when it judges and creates concepts. The two monks were not simply observing a physical phenomenon. They were engaged in a process of labeling, analyzing, and creating competing theories about it. The flag is moving is one conceptual story. The wind is moving is another, more complex conceptual story. The conflict between these two stories, the desperate need to determine which one is right, is a movement of the mind. They were more interested in their ideas about reality than in reality itself. Secondly, the mind moves when it creates a sense of separation. It creates a me, who is the subject, the observer, and a thing that is the object, the observed. I am watching the flag. This separation immediately creates the potential for conflict and disturbance. The external object is perceived as something separate that is happening to me, and I can either like it or dislike it. This sense of a separate self, observing and judging the world, is the fundamental movement of the egoic mind. Thirdly, the mind moves when it is filled with desire. The monks desired to be right. They were attached to their respective positions. This desire, this attachment to a particular intellectual viewpoint, is a powerful agitation of the mind. They were not at peace because their minds were grasping, clinging to a concept. Huineng's teaching is that if the problem is the movement of the mind, then the solution must be the stillness of the mind. And what is a still mind? A still mind is not a blank mind, an empty trance, or a state of intellectual stupor. A still mind is like a deep, clear lake. The winds of the world can blow across its surface. The flags of life's events can be reflected upon it, but the depths of the lake remain profoundly undisturbed. A still mind can perceive the wind blowing and the flag flapping with perfect clarity, but it does not create a second layer of story, judgment, or conflict about it. It simply allows reality to be as it is. It is a mirror-like awareness that reflects whatever comes before it, the pleasant, the unpleasant, the beautiful, the ugly, without being stained, distorted, or agitated by the reflection. When the object is gone, the mirror is empty again. This still mind is the mind of the farmer who saw his horse run away and simply said, "Who knows?" His mind was not moved by the concept of bad luck. It is the mind of Tanzan, who carried the woman across the mud and then walked on for hours, his mind unburdened. He was not moved by the concept of, "I have broken a rule." It is the mind that can simply wash the bowl, fully engaged in the task, without being moved by the thoughts, "This is boring," or "I'd rather be doing something else." The profound and liberating implication of Huineng's teaching is that the power to be at peace resides entirely within ourselves. We are not the helpless victims of a chaotic external world. We are not dependent on our neighbors turning down their music, or the political climate changing, or other drivers being more courteous. Our peace is not contingent on stopping the wind. That is an impossible task. Our peace is contingent on learning to still the mind. How do we practice this? We can start by noticing our own moving minds. The next time you feel disturbed, angry, or anxious, pause. Notice the immediate tendency to locate the source of the problem. Out there, my boss is making me furious. This traffic is ruining my day. See this for what it is: the wind, flag, debate. You are blaming, the external object, for your internal state. Now, practice the Huineng pivot. Gently, but firmly, turn the spotlight of your attention inward. Ask, what is the actual movement happening in my mind right now? What story am I telling myself about this situation? What judgment am I making? Can I feel the energy of my own anger or anxiety as a sensation in my body, distinct from the external event? In that moment of seeing your own mind's movement, you have already created a space of freedom. You are no longer unconsciously identified with the reaction. This doesn't mean we become passive or apathetic. A person with a still mind can still act with incredible power and effectiveness. They can still choose to have a difficult conversation with their boss, or work to change a political system they find unjust. But their action comes not from a place of blind, personal, egoic reactivity, but from a place of calm, centered clarity. They act not because their own mind is disturbed, but because they see a situation that needs a wise and compassionate response. The world will always be full of wind and flapping flags. It will always be a place of change, chaos, and unpredictability. You will never be able to iron it all out into a smooth, predictable, and permanently pleasant landscape. The spiritual path is not the futile attempt to do so. It is the far more intimate and rewarding work of learning to befriend and understand your own mind. It is the discovery that within you, right now, there is a place of profound stillness that is untouched by the winds of the world. The journey is simply to learn how to access that unmoving center. When the mind is still, the entire universe comes to rest. 20. The long spoons. What is the ultimate purpose of this journey inward? We have walked a long road together. We have sought to quiet the mind, to let go of our judgments, to accept the world as it is, and to see through the illusion of a fixed and separate self. But where does this path lead? If we are not striving for heavenly rewards, not building an inner fortress, and not clinging to a personal identity, what is the point? It is a fair question, and the answer is not a concept, but a transformationa, profound shift in orientation that changes everything. This shift is illustrated most beautifully in a powerful parable that speaks to the very heart of human suffering and liberation. The story tells of a sincere spiritual seeker who, after years of diligent practice, was granted a vision. He asked his guide, "Please, show me the nature of hell." The scene shifted, and the seeker found himself standing in a magnificent, grand hall. In the center of the hall was a huge, round table, and on the table sat an enormous pot of the most delicious, fragrant stew imaginable. The aroma alone was intoxicating, promising deep satisfaction and nourishment. Seated around the table were countless people, yet their faces were gaunt, their bodies emaciated, and their eyes filled with a desperate, agonizing hunger. They were starving in the midst of abundance. The seeker looked closer and saw the reason for their torment. Each person held a spoon, but the spoons were bizarre. They had handles that were 3 or 4 feet long enough to easily reach the pot of stew in the center, but far too long to bring the food back to their own mouths. He watched as they frantically plunged their long spoons into the stew, capturing a delicious spoonful, only to try and fail, again and again, to feed themselves. They would jab and maneuver, spilling the precious food, their frustration mounting with each failed attempt. They looked at each other with suspicion and envy, each person locked in the solitary prison of their own desperate, unfulfilled desire. This, the seeker understood, was hell. To have the source of all happiness within reach, yet to be eternally unable to ache. Then, the seeker turned to his guide. "Now," he said, "please, show me the nature of heaven." The guide nodded, and the scene shifted again. The seeker braced himself for a scene of ethereal beauty, of clouds and golden light. But he was stunned to find himself standing in the exact same room. It was the same grand hall, the same large, round table, the same enormous pot of fragrant, delicious stew. And seated around the table were the same kinds of people, holding the exact same long-handled spoons. But everything was different. The atmosphere here was not one of torment, but of joy. The people were laughing, talking, and their faces were plump, radiant, and filled with contentment. They were perfectly nourished and deeply happy. The seeker was utterly bewildered. The conditions were identical. The tools were identical. Why was this place heaven, while the other was hell? He watched intently, and then he saw it. The simple, profound, and world-changing difference. In heaven, each person would dip their long spoon into the pot of stew, but instead of trying to feed themselves, they would reach across the table and feed the person sitting opposite them. And the person they fed, in turn, would do the same for another. In this simple, graceful dance of mutual care, everyone was fed, everyone was nourished, and everyone was happy. The problem of the long spoon was never a problem of engineering. It was a problem of consciousness. This parable is the culmination of the entire Zen path. It reveals that our greatest suffering and our greatest joy are not determined by the external conditions of our lives, but by the orientation of our own hearts. Hell is the state of the separate self, the egoic mind. The long spoon is a perfect metaphor for this mind. The ego is obsessed with its own needs, its own survival, its own fulfillment. What about me? How can I get what I want? This is the constant, nagging question that drives us. Like the long spoon, the ego is a tool that is very good at reaching for things. It can scheme, it can strive, it can grasp for success, for pleasure, for recognition, but it can never bring true nourishment back to itself. Because true nourishment, love, connection, joy, peace, cannot be consumed by an isolated self. The very act of grasping for happiness for me alone ensures that I will remain hungry. This is the ultimate paradox of self-centeredness. It is a self-perpetuating starvation. Heaven, on the other hand, is the state of the awakened mind, the mind that has realized the truth of no self. All the practices we have explored of stilling the mind, of letting go of judgment, of seeing through our concepts are designed to loosen the grip of this tyrannical I. When we deeply see that the separate self is a convenient fiction, a mental construct, the entire project of feeding me collapses. The desperate, anxious striving ceases. And in that quiet space, a new question arises. The question is no longer, how can I get fed? The question becomes, simply, there is hunger. How can this hunger be met? With a still mind and an open heart, the answer is obvious. The most direct, logical, and effective way to use the tool you have, the long spoon, is to feed the being you can reach. This is the secret of compassion. In Zen, compassion, karuna, is not seen as a moralistic duty, something a good person forces themselves to do out of a sense of obligation. That is still the ego, trying to be a good ego. True, spontaneous compassion is the natural and effortless expression of wisdom, prajna. It is the action that naturally flows from the deep seeing that you and I are not fundamentally separate. It is the realization that we are all expressions of one single, interconnected life. When you see this, feeding you is no different from feeding myself. Your joy is my joy. Your suffering is my suffering. It is not a moral calculation. It is the simple, loving logic of reality itself. This parable invites us to look at our own lives, at our own long spoons. Your spoon is your unique collection of gifts, talents, resources, and energy. It is your ability to listen, your capacity for kindness, your time, your attention. How are you using it? Are you living in hell, frantically trying to maneuver your spoon to feed only your own mouth? In your career, is your focus solely on your own advancement, your own bonus, your own recognition? In your relationships, are you keeping a scorecard, always making sure you're getting as much as you're giving? In a simple conversation, are you just waiting for the other person to stop talking so you can express your own opinion, feed your own need to be heard? This is the path of endless frustration. The shift to heaven is available in every moment. It is the choice to turn the spoon around. At work, it might mean taking 10 minutes to use your expertise to help a colleague who is struggling without any thought of what they can do for you in return. In your family, it might mean putting down your phone and feeding your nurse or your child with your complete, undivided, loving attention. When you feel lonely and consumed by your own lack of connection, the practice is to find one small way to alleviate the loneliness of another: a kind word to a cashier, a small donation to a cause you believe in, a call to a friend you know is having a hard time. The beautiful paradox of the parable is that in the very act of feeding others, you are fed. The joy, the connection, the love you give away is the very nourishment that your own heart has been starving for. You escape the prison of the self not by breaking down the walls, but by simply forgetting to guard the door. The entire journey of Zen, from the first conscious breath to the deepest insight, is for this. It is a process of liberation from the cramped, miserable hell of the self-preoccupied mind. It is a training that allows us to see that the conditions of our lives are workable, that our minds can be still, that our hearts can be open. It is a path that leads us, finally, to the simple, joyful, and world-transforming realization that we hold the keys to both heaven and hell in our own two hands. They are not future destinations. They are choices we make, right here, right now, about which direction we will point our spoon. The river that flows home. We have traveled a long road together, down winding paths and across muddy roads. We began in a place of quiet struggle, feeling the weight of the world, trapped in the prisons of our own making. We have listened to the stories of masters and monks, of farmers and fools, and through their eyes, we have begun to see our own lives in a new light. What is the thread that weaves all these teachings together? It is a simple and profoundly liberating truth. The source of our suffering is not in the world, but in our mind's relationship to the world. And therefore, the source of our freedom is also in our mind. We believed that peace was a destination we had to reach, a prize we had to win. But the masters have shown us, again and again, that peace is our original nature. It is the silence that was here before the first thought. The cup of tea, the empty boat, the clean bowl, they all point back to the sacredness of this moment, exactly as it is. They invite us to stop searching for something more, and to instead open ourselves to the profound reality that is already here, offering itself to us in every breath. We thought freedom meant being exempt from life's pain, but the wild fox taught us that freedom is found in embracing cause and effect with clarity. We thought purity meant avoiding life's messiness, but Tanzan showed us that true purity is a heart that can walk through the mud and not be stained. We sought a grand final answer to life's great mystery, but Dogo taught us that the most compassionate response is a loving silence that honors the truth beyond all concepts. This path is not about becoming a perfect, unfeeling stone. It is about becoming a fully alive, deeply human being, with a heart so spacious it can hold both the laughter of heaven and the sorrow of hell. The goal is not to eliminate the waves of life, but to discover that you are the ocean. The waves of thought, of emotion, of circumstance will always rise and fall, but your true nature, that silent, aware, loving presence is the deep, quiet water that is never disturbed. The journey inward does not end here. This is simply a homecoming. It is a return to the truth of who you have always been, beneath the stories, the fears, and the frantic movements of the mind. The real practice begins now, in your own life. It begins the next time you feel anger, the next time you wash a dish, the next time you look into the eyes of another. There is no need to grasp. There is no need to strive. Simply be here. The river of your own life is flowing, and it is flowing, always, back to the great ocean of peace from which it came. All you have to do is let it carry you.